Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is the weekly episode of now called Tech Thursdays. I've changed the name, so from now on we're calling these sort of weekly live streams Tech Thursdays. I couldn't think of any other name. I think that's original enough since it always is every Thursday. And I don't think I've missed an episode or a week in the 61 episodes that we've done now. This is like 61 weeks in a row now that I think about it. So it's Tech Thursdays going forward. I'm not going to start at episode 1 again. We're just going to roll from episode 61 to keep on going. So this week is probably going to be very short. There's not a whole lot to talk about, to be honest. Like, I was looking through some of the news articles for this week, and it's very dry. It's been drying up. Like, tech news has been just drying up in general for the past month or two now. Really, the only thing that I wanted to talk about was expectations for Computex, which is literally, I think it's like, what, a week and a half from now? Or it's actually even less than a week and a half. It's like it's 1 week and 2 or 3 days. So that's basically all I'm going to talk about. So it's probably going to be the shortest episode ever. At least for me. Hey, Matt. Hey, Nicholas. The RTX 5000 series is just more fake news. The only 5000 series GPU. The Blackwell Titan. Isn't the 5090 based off of the Titan SKU? Like, in general, the Titan has always been the largest die of the generation, and that changed with the 3090. The 3090 was basically a Titan class GPU, just named differently. So, just to kind of go over Nvidia's naming conventions over the years, just to review those, if we remember the Titan XP, there was the Titan X, which was Maxwell based, so that was 900 series based. So this is a fully unlocked 980 Ti. That is what the Titan X was. It's a fully unlocked 980 Ti. So keep that in mind. This and this are mostly the same thing. Now, why is my... Hold on, why is my... Okay, there we go. There's like a line in the camera. Anyway, so those are the same things. So keep that in mind. Then there was the Titan X. Again. They called it the Titan X again. But it was Pascal. Now, the tech public, well, we'll get into that, eventually renamed this something. They called it Big P. Titan X Big P. Or Titan XP. That's what people were calling it. This was a more unlocked 1080 Ti. More unlocked. Keep in mind, I use the word more, not fully, because later on they launched the Titan X little p. The Titan X little p was the fully unlocked 1080 Ti. Now, I don't like to use these, but the general public doesn't know the internal names. Like, they're not going to know GP102, GP104. They don't know what that means. So if I start speaking in that language, I feel like I'm going to alienate people and they're not going to know what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm using the Ti nomenclature, because that people can understand what I'm talking about. So, meaning this one was the fully unlocked 1080 Ti. So, now we come to let's skip the 20 series. Well, do we want to skip the 20 series? Well, I'll just talk about the Titan RTX is a fully unlocked 2080 Ti. That's a Titan RTX. So they did that also. So, but now, fast forward to the year 2020, and things changed. They launched RTX 3090. And that's what they launched. And then, in 2022, they launched RTX 3090 Ti. So, this one is the fully unlocked. This one is the cut down. So, but there was no Titan name. So this is what was different. Historically, you guys may or may not remember this, the GTX 690. The GTX 690 was a dual GTX 680. It was a 680. It was basically GTX 680 times 2. It was 2 physical dies on the same PCB. So it was basically what people call a dual GPU. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, in SLI terms, there is a terminology. So in terminology, if you do, back in the day, you could do more than 2 graphics cards. You could do 1 graphics card. You could do a second graphics card. You could do, and that was called two-way, and then you have your little bridge, your little crossfire, your SLI bridge. So you had your little bridge, and this was called a two-way SLI. Two-way SLI. Then there was also 1, 2, maybe I should make these smaller, 3. You could do 3 with a bridge. This was called three-way SLI. And then there was also the one where you had 4 of them, 4 graphics cards. And I think, I'm trying to remember how you actually had that set up. I think it was like, this was a bridge. Then there was another bridge like that. And then there was another bridge like this or something. It was like this. 4-way SLI. There was such a thing as 4-way SLI. Now, the reason why I'm talking about SLI, people are like, why are you talking about multi-GPU? Because this was dual GPU. So this was basically like a 2-way SLI built in, sort of, but it did not have the physical SLI bridge because both GPU dies were on the same PCB. Then someone got the idea, well, what happens if I put 2 GTX 690s in SLI? What happens if I run 2? And remember, these are $3,000 graphics cards. $3,000 graphics cards back when they launched in, I believe, 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. Someone can Google that. GTX 690 was a $3,000. Was it $3,000? No, I'm thinking of a different graphics card. I'm thinking of another dual GPU. There was another dual GPU. There was something called the Titan Z. The Titan Z was, I gotta remember what this actually was. This, I think, was a dual. Yeah, Shadow was right. It was $1,000 for a 690. The Titan Z. Yeah, this is actually wrong. I need to delete this. That's not right. Just ignore that. The Titan Z was $3,000. The Titan Z was a $3,000 graphics card. This one. That was also a dual GPU. Now, I'm trying to remember what the generation was. I think Titan Z was dual 780s. Dual, so it was basically GTX 780 times 2. If I remember correctly, that's what it was. Do you guys know what that was? Shadow saying that was Kepler. Okay, yeah, Kepler is 780. Kepler was big, so 780 was big Kepler, 680 was medium Kepler. So basically, keep in mind, technically, if we're really talking about the big dies, because people are under this assumption that the 4090 is a cut down. Well, who cares? Because the 780 is a cut down Titan. Just FYI. The 780 Ti, so there's the Titan. Okay, there's the original. Actually, the original Titan. I should have started with the original Titan. What am I doing? The original Titan, the OG Titan, the first one, the first Titan was fully unlocked 780 slash Titan. You know what? I'm just gonna say fully unlocked Kepler. It's better to use the generation. The original Titan was a fully unlocked Kepler. This was a 700 series Titan. The original Titan. The original Titan was $1,000. This was the first $1,000 consumer graphics card. Nvidia launched it in the year of 2013. 11 years ago. So for people who keep thinking, oh, Nvidia's been charging, Nvidia only started charging like so much in recent generations. No, Nvidia has been charging $1,000 for graphics cards in the consumer market since the year 2013. Keep that in mind. The original Titan was marketed as a consumer product because it did not have the same type of drivers that the Quadro cards had. So as far as the Titan was concerned, in Nvidia's internal product line, the Titan was a consumer GPU, aka it was a GeForce product, not a Quadro product. So the Titan was a gamer product, but nobody really cared because for some reason back then people were smart and they didn't want to pay $1,000 for a graphics card, the vast majority of people. So it was basically a Halo product that just kind of sat out there and didn't really do anything. And that's basically what it was. It was a fully unlocked product in the gaming market that didn't really offer a whole lot in terms of value based off of the slightly cut down variant, which in this case would have been the 780 Ti. The 780 Ti was a cut down Titan. But the other thing is the 780 is an even more cut down Titan. So do you see what I'm saying? So it's not like, oh, they have one big Titan and they have like the little one that's the cut down. No, sometimes they have another one that is even more cut down than the big one. Kind of like how AMD has the 7900 XTX, the 7900 XT, and the 7900 GRE. And technically, AMD has a fourth one. They have the professional W7800, which is a 70 compute unit based off of Navi 31. So AMD actually has 4 different variants or products that use the Navi 31. But anyway, the point is Nvidia had 3 products in the Kepler generation that all used the big die. So the unlocking stuff, that doesn't matter. The point, that is all based off of chip yield. The way Nvidia decides how much they can cut down in the early days of segmenting the products is it's ultimately based on 2 things. One is based off of product positioning in terms of price. The other one is also determined by the yields. What's the yield that they get per wafer for these larger dies? Because these larger dies are more prone to failure when they're being manufactured from the fab. So this is basically the history of the high-end Nvidia products. Oh, but one thing I wanted to finish talking about with the SLI stuff. So if you took two GTX 690s or 590s, because 590 was another dual GPU, or the Titan Z, which was dual GTX 780s. Keep in mind, the Titan Z was a $3,000 GPU that consisted of two 780s, not two 780 Ti's, not two Titans. No, it was like two 780s or something like that. So that was basically like a huge ripoff. $3,000 for, a built-in SLI 780. That's terrible. But the thing is, when you have two of these, if this is a Titan Z and this is a Titan Z, and you put them in SLI, so you have your little bridge connecting the two of them, this is not two-way SLI. So it is politically incorrect, or it is technically wrong to say that two Titan Zs are a two-way SLI. This is wrong. And it's also wrong to say four-way SLI, because this is not a four-way SLI either. This is called a quad SLI. That is the correct terminology. That is the answer to the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire question if this ever comes up. Not two-way, that's wrong, and four-way is also wrong. It's quad SLI. Because quad SLI is two dual GPUs that physically have the SLI bridge. So the behavior is slightly different. Titan Black. Oh, yeah, the Titan Black. Yeah. They had another one, too. Titan Z was 780 Ti. Oh, Titan Black was the other one, right? Which one? One of them was the dual of the cut down. The other one was the dual of the larger one. I mean, the more unlocked one, but not the fully unlocked one. So the Titan Z was two 780 Ti's. So keep in mind, that means that it's still a cut down die that they're using, because the 780 Ti is not the fully unlocked Kepler die. The original Titan is the fully unlocked. So that would be like if they took two 3090s and they put them together, because that's a cut down 3090 Ti. Titan was cut down. Titan Black was the full. Oh, you're right. Yeah, that just shows. Yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, there was a fourth one, guys. I completely forgot. So there was the Titan Black. Yeah. The Titan Black was the full unlocked. So they basically had four different SKUs. They had the full Titan Black. They had the Titan, which was just it was a $1,000 cut down GPU. Then they had the 780 Ti, which is a more cut down Kepler. Then they had the 780, which was the most cut down of the big Keplers. GK110, that was the die, yes. That was the family. GK110. Okay, so that is a history lesson on like the high-end Nvidia cards and how they basically used to use a different branding strategy that never really caught on with the consumer market. And this is the reason why I don't really see a need for the Titan brand to ever come back. Especially considering that you have random AIBs like Sparkle releasing an Intel GPU and calling it a Titan. And it's like a $300 GPU. And they call it a Titan. The Sparkle Titan A770. Yeah, that's going to cause a lot of confusion if Nvidia tries to bring back that thing. So I don't think Titan's ever going to come back, because they found out that if you remove the Titan name and you instead use the number and just use the largest single digit number out of the natural numbers, in this case 9 being the largest of the single digit numbers, it just sells a lot better. For some reason, it has a better mirror effect or something, or halo effect on the psychology of humans or something. I don't know. They figured it out. They did some voodoo black magic and figured out, hey, the answer is, or maybe they asked their AI bot, like internally, hey, what's a better marketing name for a GPU, Titan or 90? And it's like 90 is better, and they probably gave them some kind of weird reason why. So anyway, are we going to see another Titan? Probably not. It's probably never going to come back, because they sell way more 90 class cards than any of the others. There is Titan V. There is a Titan V. The Titan V was the gold colored Titan. It was called the Titan V. It stands for the Volta architecture. Titan V is a gold color. It looks like it has the exact same cooler as a 1080 Ti, except it's like a gold color instead of silver color. It's not it's Volta. Volta. Not Volta. It's Volta. It's based off of the math scientist, Volta. Yeah. It's Volta. The Titan V was the Volta. This is the one that was between the Titan RTX, which was based off of 20 series, the Turing Titan, and the Titan X little p, which was the fully unlocked Pascal Titan. So basically, I have these all out of order, but in general, it was this one. This one was first. This one was second. No. This one was, wait. This one was third? This one was fourth? Or maybe this one was fourth and this one was third. And then this one was fifth. This one was sixth. This one was seventh, eighth, and ninth. And then 10. And then it just goes on from there. That's the order. In fact, well, whatever. You guys get what I'm saying. Like, we're not even considering the 90s, so forget about them. So there's 8 different Titans. There's 8 different Titans. Titan RTX was the last one. It was a 20 series Titan. Titan V was the one before that. There was a Titan V that had Jensen's signature on it, or something like that. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that doesn't count. That doesn't count in the same way that there's like a special. I think it's like the AMD 50th anniversary RX 5700 XT. There's like a special black one of these with like the white LED as the default instead of the red LED. So it's like that. It's like counting this. I don't count that. So we're not going to count the special autograph CEO edition. I'm sure those might command slightly higher resale value on the used market than the standard reference. But I don't think people are going to go out of their way to try to procure a Titan V CEO edition. I just don't see that happening. I don't know. Like, it doesn't offer much over the original Titan Volta. So anyway, that is a history on, like, the high-end Nvidia cards. Because these are, like, the real high-end Nvidia cards. And they've always been stupidly expensive. Anything with a Titan name has always started at $1,000 and been more than $1,000. So that brings us to 3090 and 4090 and 3090 Ti. So those cards, everyone's been complaining since the 3090's launch that Nvidia has priced like their highest end cards out of the market. That's actually not true, because those individuals, they completely forgot about all of these cards. They completely forgot that these cards existed once upon a time. So no, Nvidia has always priced their highest end offerings in the $1,000 plus price bracket. The ones that did not carry the Titan name, like for example these cut down rinky-dink 780 and 780 Ti, which aged very poorly, I might add. They were like $540. I think one of them was like $600 or $649. I think 780 Ti was $600, $599, $600, or $649, somewhere in there. And the 780 I think was like $549 or 600 when it came out originally. So it's always been kind of dumb expensive for their cards. Their cards have always cost the price of a PlayStation 3 or more for these, like, the highest family die of their generation. Like the Kepler GK110, all the big dies have always cost a lot of money. The 90 name has replaced the 80 tie. No. Well, I know what you mean, but not really. No. Why does the 3080 Ti exist? Why does the 4080 Super exist? The 4080 Super is basically the 4080 Ti. If we're going by that logic, the 4080 Ti is a 4080 Super. I've already been through this. Internally, I refer to the 4080 Super as the 4080 Ti. I literally call it 4080 Ti. So I wouldn't be surprised if I make a video in the future and I accidentally, like, refer to the 4080 Super as the 4080 Ti, and if I put it the bar charts, it's probably going to be labeled as 4080 Ti. So 4080 Ti is not a 4090. 4080 Ti is 4080 Super. How often has Nvidia done these intermediate dies? Like, how often have they done that? Like, so, okay. 102, 103, 104. Okay, tell me what is the 102 for Pascal, for 10 series? What is the 10 series of this? Is it the 1080 Ti? What is this in Pascal? Is what I'm asking. I don't want to hear 40 series, 30 series. No. What is this in 10 series? Pascal. I didn't say 20 series. What is this in 10 series? What is the 10 series 102? Pascal. I'm asking about Pascal. So the 1080 Ti is a 102. What is the 103 for Pascal? Shadow's saying the Titan and 1080 Ti. Okay, same thing. They're both 102. If we're going by this logic. So now the question is, what is the 103 for Pascal? Tell me the name of the GPU from the 10 series that used the 103 die. Anybody? I can't remember for some reason. And I would like to think that I have a pretty good memory when it comes to these things. It wasn't used for GeForce. There you go. And hence, that's the reason why the 4080 Super is a 4080 Ti. So you can't just say, I know the 1080 is a 104. I know that. That I know. See, that wasn't the question. The question wasn't about the 104. I know what that is. I'm asking what's the 103 for Pascal. And the answer is there wasn't one for GeForce. So it was a trick question. And the reason why I asked this question is to prove that you can't always use these dies and correlate them directly to an Nvidia named product, is what I'm saying. The next question. What is the 3080? What is the 3080? Is that a 103 or is that a 102? Compared to what, the 3070 and the 3090. Where does the 3080 sit? See, the point is, you can't just say that just because it's 103, it can't be an 80 class product. You literally proved that wrong when you said that the 1080 is a 104. It's GA102. Okay, so do you see where we're going with this? Do you see why this is a pointless argument? Because this is a 1080. This is a 1080 Ti. This is nothing. So now you also have this and that in the same, like you have those up there. Why is this down here? And it isn't even just the 1080. There's more. Wait, there's more. There's 680. That's also a 104. And that's an 80 class product. So do you see what I'm saying? Like this is a pointless argument because meaning you cannot look at the number 80 and assume that that's supposed to be the biggest die, because Nvidia doesn't always do things that way. GA103 wasn't used. I know, that's why I'm saying. So saying that 103 automatically correlates with a 70 class, see, that's kind of it's an invalid response, because why do they have 80 class products that exist in the 104 family? Why is that the case? And this was the second fastest of the, well, technically I guess it's the third fastest, because the Titan, well, no, maybe it's the fourth fastest, because there was this and this and this. So that would make the 1080 the fourth fastest Pascal GPU. It comes down to die cost. Yeah, so you can't just say that. Yeah, you have to forget about the 80 numbers and because this is just a stupid game that Nvidia's playing when it comes to just product positioning. Do you guys understand? I'm trying to help you understand that you cannot look at like an 80 number and automatically assume, oh, that's a 102. 3080 Ti. Oh, that's a 102. 3080. Oh, that's a 102. In that generation, that holds true. That's true in the case of the Ampere series. That is definitely not true in the Pascal series, nor is it true in the Kepler series. We haven't even looked at Maxwell yet. So, okay, let's talk about Maxwell. Maxwell's an interesting one. So, what is the GTX 980? As far as I remember, the 980, I think, is a 104 die. You know what? So is the 970. So, these two are either in this family, which I'm pretty sure they are. I think they're 204. GM 204 is what I think both of these are. So, see, it gets even more wonky when you start looking at more than just one or two GPU generations. And, by the way, all of this is TSMC. None of this is Samsung. So the point is, you can't just look at a die, like you can't look at a product name and just automatically assume, oh, the 680. It's an 80, which means it's gotta be the biggest die, because that would be wrong. Likewise, you can't just look at the 980 and say, oh, it's an 80 class product. It's gotta be the biggest die. That's incorrect, because it's not the biggest die. Die class to determine what class it is? Yeah, no, that's completely wrong. That's very wrong. It's, well, I mean, you can look at it that way, but that doesn't mean that it's correct. That doesn't mean that it's correct. Look at all the Titan cards. The one truth, and the one good thing about the Titan brand, like you said earlier, the one good thing about the Titan brand is the Titan brand always signified that it was the largest die. That was the one good thing about the Titan product. Now, maybe internally Nvidia decided, since they don't use the Titan branding anymore and they use the 90 number, maybe that means that going forward the 90 number indicates the biggest die, or a product with a 90 class naming convention, or a 3090, 4090, etc., 5090. Maybe that will correlate to the biggest die going forward because they no longer use the Titan brand. But it certainly wasn't true when they had the Titan brand. The only way to know for sure, without access to the internet, I guess, so this is like hypothetical, right? Like, if this is hypothetical, without knowing the answer, without being able to look it up or Google what the answer is, someone cannot assume that an 80 class product that they purchase automatically equates to the largest die. But if they purchase a Titan or a 90, they are pretty much guaranteed to get a product with the largest die. That we can say is true. But we cannot say that an 80 class product automatically means it's the biggest die, or it's a 70 Ti product. No, because the 70 Ti thing, that's relatively recent. So, no. The only truth in all of this is if it's Titan, it's the big die. If it's 90, it's the big die. If it's anything else, it might not be the biggest die. That doesn't mean that it can't be the biggest die. It just means that it's not guaranteed to be the biggest die. And there's a big difference between something being guaranteed versus something that is assumed or thought to be true based off of some previous generations of GPUs. Because we have proven here that that is definitely not true with the 90 or with the 80 class products. Because there are literally a bunch of them. There's literally one that exists as the higher end product when it launched, and that thing was like a 104 or a 204 from day one. So, yeah, that's totally not true. You got lucky on 3080 that it used 102. The only reason it did was because the Samsung Note was crap. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, right? Like, it's you don't really, the consumer doesn't have any say in how that's going to play out. That's up to Nvidia to decide based off of the yields, based off of the unit cost, the BOM cost, how they're going to ultimately brand a given die. So, but what seems to be pretty clear based off of all the evidence presented here and all the historical trends, that if the product has a Titan name, it's pretty much guaranteed to be the biggest die in the family. And if it's a 90 class product, it is also with high probability. Now, the thing is, we haven't had enough generations of 90 class products to conclude this, but even if you use the dual GPUs, and that's why I wanted to mention the dual GPUs, like the 690 and the 590 and the Titan Z, those have always historically been dual versions of the higher end die. So that is the way to look at it. So that is the reason why a 4080 Super is a 4080 Ti. And there's no arguing around that, because if you look at the TI class, the TI class is always like it's either the larger of the same family of whatever the non-TI is. So for example, the 780 and the 780 Ti. We won't go with the 900 series because that one we know doesn't follow the pattern. 780, 780 Ti is basically the same thing as 4080 and 4080 Super. The only difference, and probably the reason why Nvidia did not call the 4080 Super a 4080 Ti, is because it is so similar. Because literally, I think the only difference is that the 4080 Super has the very last SM turned on. Like, it's the fully unlocked 103. It's the fully unlocked 103. So I call it TI. I call it the 80 Ti because they turned on that last part of silicon, and it's kind of like a 780 Ti in that regard versus a 780. Or it's similar to a 3080 versus a 3080 Ti. Like, they turned on more of the silicon for that die. That's basically, it has 4 SMs enabled. The 4080 Super has 4. Okay, I thought it had 1. Well, that means it's even more, it has more enabled than I originally thought. Okay, well, that's the 4080 Ti, as far as I'm concerned. Because we talked about this last time. In fact, we talked about this more than a year ago. We've had a similar discussion on, do you guys remember when I talked about RTX 4090 Ti and RTX 4080 Ti. I talked about these two GPUs more than a year ago now. And we proved that this one already exists as a professional card. So we already know that the fully unlocked die for the 102 has existed for a long time. Now, what we did not know was if and when this would come out. Well, it turns out it did come out. It is the fully unlocked 103 die of the Ada generation. So, as far as I'm concerned, both of these products exist. One of them is a professional card for $7,000. The other one is it's like a cost reduction version of the card that it replaced, aka the 4080. So we did technically, or I guess Nvidia technically released products that use dies that correlate with these products or these naming conventions. Now, they never used these naming conventions. They never officially branded anything 4090 Ti. Neither did they brand anything 4080 Ti. But that doesn't mean that these products don't exist. Obviously, the dies that these would correlate to exist. Remember that Nvidia wanted to call 40... Yeah, that is no different from this. Because remember, they had Titan Black, they had Titan, they had 780 Ti, and they had 780. So they literally they've already done this. They had 4 different products that all had the same die. But I get what you're saying, because someone's going to say that the fake 4080 12 gig thing was never supposed to be called the 4080 because it was a completely different die. It was like a 104 whatever. So it is what it is. You know, like, whatever. So these exist. Yeah, and you cannot conclude that an 80 class product instantly correlates to the biggest die, the 102, because that's not true. It's wrong. It's not a good assumption to use going forward. So that is okay. Now, all of this being said, do we know if at Computex if they're even going to talk about this stuff? I highly doubt it. So we got Computex in like a week, less than a week and a half. And what is this? RTX 5090 rumor alleges 512-bit monster 16 GD. Is this? No, that. Okay, what? This sounds so dumb. This is less memory than the existing 90 class. That's way wrong. If that's what this says, this is completely wrong. FE uses 3 PCBs to leave space for double-sided... What? GB2... This... Okay, this looks so fake. Okay, somebody... It's just a render. Okay, that's... Whatever. Okay. Like I said earlier, I don't expect Nvidia to drastically deviate from their reference Founders Edition cooler design. I think that they're going to stick with what works. But I really think that AIBs for both Radeon and GeForce need to copy their design and do something similar. Like, obviously it's not going to look exactly the same, but they should try this flow-through design on their own custom AIB cards, because from my own experience using the flow-through design cooler, I think it's one of the best designs for an air cooler. Now, I have known this since the days of the Sapphire Tri-X Fury, so I've always been a fan of the flow-through design. So I really want to see more AIB partners attempt to do something like that. Make a smaller PCB and allow one of the fans, either the second or the third fan, to basically have full range to just blow all the air through the heatsink and not run up against the PCB. I really think they should do this. 16 gigabyte, 16, what? Means 32? Wait, so is it real? Hold on. Is this correct? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see. So 16 squares, that means 32 gigs of VRAM. So yeah, if this is true, then I mean that makes sense. If they're gonna do that, if the 5090 is gonna be 512, because we talked about this before. The only way that Nvidia can get better scaling, they either have to go wider on the memory interface, but then they would have to change. They'd have to somehow scale up how the scheduling is done so that they get better utilization. Because if you just go really wide, like how AMD did with the Fury and the Vega, the problem with that is if the scheduler cannot feed the work groups fast enough, because the pipe is so wide, you basically get a bunch of parts that are idling, like during different cycles. So you're not getting the best utilization out of the silicon. So they're going to have to do something to the front end if they're actually going to do 512. Because 512-bit memory interfaces, that requires a beefier front end to push everything to work in conjunction and basically get the best optimization of the silicon. So that'll be interesting to see if that's actually true. I don't think this is... So now that you told me that it means 32 gigs, and I probably should have counted these before, but yeah. So this actually might be true, because this is one way that Nvidia can get a decent uplift over the 4090, is by going with a wider memory interface, re-architecting the front end so that it can actually utilize that wider memory interface, and also do a memory bump. I mean, that makes sense considering they want to continue leading the AI push, and they know that they're already aware that a lot of these startup companies have been using their 4090s for AI and not for gaming, and they're just kind of using that on the cheap end. If their LLM can fit within that 24 gigabyte frame buffer, they don't need a RTX professional card. They don't need a 48 gigabyte GPU. Now, it would help, it wouldn't hurt, but it's just so expensive that most people don't want to do that. Especially because, keep in mind that these guys are buying a lot of these. They're not buying like one or two 4090s just to do some like hobbyist. No, they're trying to run a business, or they're trying to do some kind of like venture capital research stuff that could lead to a business opportunity. So they're buying a bunch of these cards, not just like one or two. No, we're talking like double-digit minimum of these cards. So 32 gigabytes, that makes a lot of sense actually. So this could be true. I don't think this is fake. It doesn't sound like it's unbelievable to think that they could do 512 with 32 gigabyte memory modules on consumer. Now, it's going to be expensive. It's going to be at least $2,000, I'll tell you that. Ideally, Nvidia wants to charge $2,500 because they already charged $2,500 for the Titan RTX back in the Turing days. But everybody seems to have forgotten about that because nobody paid attention to Titan. See what I'm saying? So basically, from Nvidia's perspective, they have been selling their highest-end consumer GPUs at a bargain price of $1,600. So they've been allowing... So the thing that I'll say about this is historically, the Titan was a $2,500 product. So there was no real partner margin, and that's why there was historically no partner interest in the Titan product. It was usually just like the Titan was a reference card, and that was basically all that it was. You couldn't really buy. There wasn't really a lot of different options for custom AIB Titans. Now with the 90 class, they're allowing the partners to go wild with these massive quad slot coolers and all the fancy RGB and everything. So that allows the partners to get better margin, because if Nvidia used to charge 2500 back in the 20 series days, the margin for the partner was so small. Like, because Nvidia was already charging such a high premium, the partner cannot add more on top of that, because that just kind of prices the product out of the market. You see what I'm saying? So by Nvidia charging 1500 for 3090, that allows the partner. That's the reason why these Strix cards that go for over $2,000 exist. Just FYI. That's why Asus charges that much, because they can get away with it. Because they know that the range historically has been up to 2500. That's actually where it kind of started, and then it went down. So they know the general range of what they can get away with. So they're basically making that the difference between that 1600 starting or 1500 starting, really, like after discount. It's like up to like the $2,000 that Asus charges for the Strix. Like, they're literally pocketing that $500, $400, $500 as profit margin. Because the BOM cost for a Strix versus like a tough, it's barely anything, guys. Like, at the end of the day, if you really think that it costs significantly more to add a bunch of RGB vomit LEDs to a GPU versus to make the same GPU that doesn't have it, like, you don't understand supply chain. That's all I'm gonna say. So, because the BOM cost for those Strix parts, it is nothing. It's not significantly more than like a TUF or like a standard Nvidia reference card, for that matter. So, yeah, Asus is making a killing on those 4090s. So when people are saying that the profit margins on Nvidia are not as good as AMD, that's true if you're looking at the general range. But because that doesn't really hold true at the super high end, like the enthusiast class, like the 4090, because it's a Halo product, and because the original range is like 2500, they can go to town on pricing that as high as they want, up to, like $3,000 or so, because there's gonna be people out there dumb enough to buy those things. So, because I mean, that's the reason why the GPU prices have been creeping up over time. So going back to this 32 gigabyte GPU, yeah, this thing, they're trying to get back to that $2,500 price point with stuff like this. It makes a lot of sense when you look at it from the historical pricing of the Titan cards, because that's what they want to do. They definitely want to get back to that price point. Because think about how much they're selling how much they charge on the AI on the enterprise side versus the consumer side. Like, the consumer side, that's like a garage sale price versus like what you have to spend if you want the professional cards versus what you have to spend if you want the data center cards. Those are even more. Like, those are like, I don't even know, like 10x or whatever. At least 6x the price. So it's like, man, they're making a killing on the data center. They really want to increase the profit margins in the consumer space. And there's no reason why they shouldn't do it, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they should just do whatever they want. Charge $2,500. Charge $3,000. Charge $3,000. Go ahead and do it. There'll still be people out there buying 5090 at like $3,000. I'm sure of it. Because, like, I see the 4090s Strix in the cage at Micro Center. I mean, there's people out there spending like $2,200 for the 4090, and the card isn't even new anymore. It's like, come on, guys, like, do you not pay attention? But whatever. If they want to buy that now, and then come like this fall, they're like, oh no, like 5090's out now. See, that's why, I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. People are gonna do whatever they want to do with their money. So might as well, if I was Nvidia, I would keep raising the price. I want to keep raising the price to figure out what is that upper echelon, like that real world maximum that I can get away with charging before I see a significant drop in sales. Because this thing at $2,000 is still 32 gigs of RAM for $2,000. The latest and greatest Nvidia architecture Blackwell. Dude, this thing will be sold out instantly at $2,000 day one. Like, guaranteed this thing is going to sell out day one at $2,000 MSRP. Meaning, think about that. If it's $19.99 for the Founders Edition at Best Buy, that means the Strix is going to be like $2,400. $23.99. Or maybe $24.99. Maybe they will go all the way up to the old pricing. So they're going to do it. There's no reason why they're not going to do it. They gotta justify that stock price somehow. $2,500 is the lowest price I see if they release this. Well, okay, $24.99 would be that would be like the Founders Edition MSRP if they want to go back to the Titan pricing that they had from the 20 series. But you know what that means? That means that the Strix, the Supreme X, all those cards are going to be more than $2,500. It's going to be like $2,700, $2,600, $2,800, $3,000 for the Strix. Who knows? Like, the problem, you guys have to remember, the pricing doesn't scale linearly with these sort of products. It actually, I don't want to say it's exponential. It doesn't scale exponentially, but it doesn't scale linearly. Because if you look at the difference between a tough 4060 Ti and a Strix 40, okay, well, I don't know if they do Strix 4060 Ti, but let's use a different example. If you look at a 4070 Ti Strix versus 4070 Ti Super, and you do the ratio in terms of the price markup from one SKU to the other, and then you do the same thing for the 4090s, you will see that they're not one-to-one. Like, the price increase between SKUs at the higher end scales more than at the lower end. Because they know that the target buyer is not as price conscious. See, and this is the reason why AMD's cards at the high end have not sold as well as the Nvidia cards. Because, in particular, the 7900 XTX versus the RTX 4080. So the 4080 has still outsold the XTX significantly. Like, significantly. Anyone who's arguing otherwise doesn't actually know what they're talking about. Because anyone who says that XTX sells more than 4080, they're living under a rock, or they're living in some kind of, fake world. It's like some virtual world that doesn't really exist. Because that runs counterintuitive to everything that I have seen in the field, in the real world. When I go to Micro Center, I'm more likely to see a 4080 in the cage at checkout that someone's buying than an XTX. Now, occasionally there will be an XTX, but there's almost always some kind of NVIDIA card. So even if it's the 4080. And this was back before the super cards. This was back when the 4080 was still a thing. And everyone was saying, oh, it's bad value, don't buy it. So people still bought it anyway, even though it was more expensive. And it had less VRAM. And the reason why is because once you go over that $1,000 price point, things no longer make sense. Like, the rules of physics and psychology don't really work anymore. Because in the sense that the consumer who is in the market for a $1,000 to $1,200 or $1,600 GPU, they're far less price sensitive than someone who is looking for a $500 to $550 to $600 GPU. You see what I'm saying? So there is a massive difference between somebody who is only going to buy a $500 GPU versus someone who can actually buy a $1,000 GPU. Because if the person can afford a $1,000 GPU, that means that they can almost justify relatively easily a $1,200 GPU. And that's the reason why the 4080, despite being worse value in almost every metric except for ray tracing, it still outsold the XTX, even though it cost more money. They're not good on MSRP cards, only the highest end Strix. The what? The Nvidia earnings slide proved your point. The vast majority of their sales are in the 60 range. Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it always is in the gaming market. So, see, the thing is, a lot of enthusiasts don't realize that they're such a small minority within the general gaming demographic, that it's like they almost don't really register. Like, you could literally remove all the hardware enthusiasts from the gaming market and just retain all the regular, we'll call them the normie gamers, and things would still be the same. Like, things would still scale the same. Like, in terms of the buying, like the 75% going to like 60 class range, that would never change. Like, that would only go up. Like, you remove the enthusiast, that would go up by like maybe 10%. It would probably become 85%, which means within that 25%, only really like 15% of that are true hardware enthusiasts. The remaining 10% of that 25% range, those are just like people who, they're not enthusiasts, they don't care. They're just going to buy a pre-built that comes with a 4090 or a 4080. That's basically what's going to happen. You know, like that's who those people are. Normies don't buy. Oh no, they do. Some of them do. Not a lot of them do. That's why I said 10%. Within that 25% that can buy the expensive GPUs that are above like the 60 class, you remove all the hardware enthusiasts that go for like the best stuff. Within that, you'll still get like 5 to 10% of that are people that are what you would consider a normie, that they don't actually know how to do anything with overclocking. They don't even know how to go in the BIOS and turn on XMP. Like, these sort of people. What they will do is they'll just go buy a pre-build from Origin or Main Gear or HP Omen or Dell Alienware. They'll just buy one of those things and they'll just select the highest end GPU, the 4090, or they'll just, like, they'll message their friend who they think knows about computers and say, like, what's a good one? And they'll say, okay, yeah, just get the 4080. Okay, I'll get the 4080. And that's how those things happen. If the normie has money, they will want the best and just run the best with no tweaking. Yeah, yep. Yeah, you're right, Nero. And that's the reason why AMD cannot abandon the highest end enthusiast market, because it creates a trickle-down effect. It creates a trickle-down, and I'm not the only one saying this. Like, other YouTubers have said this, like, for years. Like, having a Halo product makes a company look at your product, or makes a customer or a consumer look at your product stack, and they assume, oh, this company has the fastest thing in the world. That means they must be good. They must be competent somehow, So they'll look at that will look at their they'll get them looking at their product, and then they'll just pick from the family of products what they can actually afford or what they're willing to spend. One person that did buy a pre-built with it. Exactly. See? Exactly. People buy pre-builds, and the reality is with the Intel CPUs, like I've said before, Intel will literally just flood the market. They'll flood the OEM pre-built, the system integrator market with product because they make their own chips. Like, they're not beholden to TSMC, at least not yet. That might change. But they're not beholden to TSMC for making their CPUs. So they can literally just volume ship and flood the market with all these different SKUs of CPUs, 13900K, 13900KF, 13900 non-K, the one that actually has a cooler in the box. And then all the same stuff all the way down the stack. They can just flood the market with all that stuff, have Dell buy like large bulk quantities, give them discounts on Z790 chipsets, throw in some Thunderbolt, whatever. throw in some Wi-Fi, throw in some Intel gigabit or 2.5 gigabit NICs, whatever. Throw all that stuff in there, bundle that up, and that's how they can still maintain market share despite having objectively not as good product in certain metrics. So, I mean, that's how it works. Gamers Nexus did a really interesting video recently about Nvidia. They basically looked at how many different SKUs of graphics cards Nvidia has per generation, and they also looked at AMD's one to a lesser extent. But they found that Nvidia basically, like, they stretch out the launch cycle of their GPU so much, and then even after that, they introduce so many GPUs, and then the AIB partners introduce so many different variants of each individual different GPU. So you basically, it's almost the same effect as what Intel does, but it's more blatant because they literally just flood the market with all these different RTX branded things that a normie who doesn't know anything is just like, they're just gonna be bombarded on the wall at Micro Center with like all these green boxes everywhere. You know, it's just like, if they don't know anything, like, they're just gonna assume, you know, which one should I choose? This one's $399, that one's $499, that one's $600, that one's $1,700. That one must be like really high end, but I'm never gonna buy that thing. Yeah, that's how they're gonna look. That's the mentality they're gonna have when they look at these things. Nvidia also restricts the AIBs from making top-end cards for other vendors. Yeah, what's funny is the partner program was redacted when it was found out that they were doing that, but then they ended up redoing it anyway. That's the reason, I suspect that's the reason why MSI didn't do any RDNA 3, like any significant RDNA 3 high-end SKUs. They basically reused the same cooler that they had for the 6000 series and put that on. They call it the Classic. Man, that's lazy. So that's either lazy or there was something going on with Nvidia there. I don't think it's Nvidia. I think it was just MSI being lazy, because it's not like the others didn't do anything. The others did attempt to make stuff, but you're right. Like, for example, I often wondered why doesn't Gigabyte have a 7900 XTX Aorus Master? Like, where's their Aorus Master graphics card for the XTX? They only did the one that's below that one. They didn't do the Aorus Master for that one. But yet they had an Aorus Master for the 4080. In fact, I think they also had an Aorus Master for the 4070 Ti when it first launched. So, and I was confused, like, why did they put that super expensive cooler on a 70 class product? What? You know what I'm saying? Like, but they did it. So, but yet they didn't do that for any of the AMD cards. So, but yeah, anyway, that may have something to do with the Nvidia partner program. Yeah, so it basically went under the radar this time without people like Kyle Bennett trying to fight this in the media, like, for the consumers and fight against this sort of behavior. It's unfortunate. They did one, but it was only there for a short time. Which one? An Aorus Master? DeMarco Poole? Just subscribe. Thanks for the sub. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, this might actually be true. Who knows? We're going to hear more and more as time goes by. I don't know what is going to happen at Computex. Like, I really don't know what's going to happen in terms of Nvidia. Like, I don't know what Nvidia is going to do at Computex. I know that they're doing their own announcement, but rest assured, they're not going to launch the 5090 now. Like, that's not happening at Computex. Anyone who thinks that this is launching in June, they have no idea. They're completely out of it. Like, they're just wrong. Like, this will launch probably in Q4. Meaning October, November, December. just like they have been doing for the last 2 generations, for the past 4 years now. So that's what's going to happen. Gigabyte Aorus Master, not Aorus. I didn't say Aorus. I said Aorus Master. Where's the 7900 XTX Aorus Master? They had an Aorus Elite. Yes, I know they had an Aorus Elite, but that wasn't what I said. I said Aorus Master because Aorus Master is the really, really big, fat cooler. That's the Aorus Master is their highest end. That's basically their Strix. So my question is, where is that? Aorus Elite is not the same. The Aorus Elite is like the tough. Okay, MSI bringing DDR5 memory to PCs. Oh, is this like soldered memory? Or is this soda? What is this? Cam 2 memory to desktop PCs, upcoming Z790 Project Zero. What is this? The trend initially started with their B650M Project Zero, where they decided to position all power connectors at the back. This isn't the first time this has been done, though. I think Asus showed off something like this. Oh, this is the... No, this isn't something else. This is something memory related. Oh, is this like on a laptop? The memory sockets in parallel to the motherboard? Yeah, it's like SODIMM. Is this like SODIMM? This looks like how laptop memory sockets in. Yeah, this is how laptop memory goes, right? I mean, I've opened up lots of laptops in the past, so I know how the SODIMMs go in there. They're all parallel to the main board. Oh, it's the replacement to SODIMM. So is Cam 2 is it a standard that the laptop market is going to adopt or has already adopted? It sounds like this is the replacement to SODIMM, but this is not socketed, right? Or this is not soldered. This is... Oh, okay. Okay, well that's good. That's interesting. I mean, this stuff, at first glance, these things don't seem... Like, these don't carry a lot of weight in the enthusiast space. But the thing is, these sort of forward, innovative-looking approaches, you never know how standards will change over the next several years. Because look at how... Like, just look at a motherboard from 2024 and look at a motherboard from just 10 years ago. And you'll see all kinds of differences. You know, 10 years ago, some motherboards still had PCI. Not PCIe, PCI slots at the bottom. And now they're completely gone. So, and there was another connector that I was thinking of too that used to be on motherboards for a long time. The PS by 2. PS by 2 for the old keyboards and mice. That used to also still be on motherboards. Very commonly. Sometimes today, I think some motherboards still feature those, but it's very rare now to find a motherboard that still has a PS by 2. It's supposed to be lower power draw. Well, that means the voltage has to be really low. See, that means that that's almost like it's going to be LP DDR5, but this doesn't say that. The only thing with SODIMM and Cam 2 is the DRAM. The DRAM on the back side is probably going to run hotter than the front side because it won't have access to air. And it will also kind of be sandwiched between the motherboard and the actual DIMM. But yeah, I can see this definitely going in mobile. To me, I don't see this... At least not in the immediate future. I don't see this replacing the standard desktop memory. Because the thing is, there's still a demand, or there's still a use case for home servers. It's very niche, but there's still a use case to do desktops the traditional way. So, like, if somebody wanted to do, like, for example, I'll give you guys a good example. Like, AMD announced the Epic, like the socketed Epic for AM5 recently. So that would be like a home, well, that would be like a, not even necessarily a home server. I mean, that could literally be used in a data center with a lower power footprint or lower power profile, smaller footprint versus a traditional server or a rack server. So stuff like that could benefit from this type of form factor because you could dense pack a lot of DIMMs or a lot of memory modules in a smaller footprint. But I still think the standard DDR5 form factor for desktop and server, to me, I don't see them introducing this anytime soon as a replacement because of backwards compatibility. Because, like, if you're going to do AM5 Epic, for example, you can just plug in UDIMM DDR5. Epic 4000 is a rebrand of Ryzen for server. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and they're not going to do something like Cam 2 on that kind of platform. Yeah, because I think, if I want to say, I don't know this as fact, but my understanding is the demand for Epic 4000 came from data centers that were already using AM5, if I'm not mistaken. Like companies like Hetzner over in the EU, they are a data center that actually uses Ryzen AM5 for server purposes. Now, I don't know why they do that, other than, like, it's way cheaper than buying Epic. But in theory, I would assume that a company like Hetzner could update the BIOS on whatever motherboard they're using, whether it's like some custom Sun Micro systems or whatever, and they can just put the Epic 4000s in there. That's my assumption. I don't know if that's true. But I'm just trying to think, like, where the demand for Epic 4000, basically Epic on AM5, where that actually came from. I would assume it's from some companies like that. The platform cost is much lower for AM. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So it's like a company like Hetzner probably did that because of cost. Because they figured our customers, like, they probably figured, okay, the customer only needs no more than 16 cores, so we can do 32 thread, we can do 16 core, 32 thread on a consumer platform. We don't actually need to buy an Epic server. And there's also things, too, written into their SLA and their contracts that say, hey, keep in mind, this product is not originally designed as a server part, but, stuff like that. SMC has a 3U server chassis with 10x AM5 server blades. Yeah, see, so companies like that, that's what I'm talking about. I just use Hetzner as an example. SMC is just another example. Like another case study on why stuff like Epic 4000 makes sense. In fact, where is the Epic? There was a story on that earlier. Let's see. What is this? Navi 44. Oh, that's not even new. We'll look at that. What is this? Nvidia accelerates GPU new chips to launch each consecutive year instead of 2. That's nothing different. Okay, let's just cover this real quick since we've been talking about Nvidia. Nvidia accelerates GPU, CPU, AI platform roadmap. All this means, without reading into this basically means that going forward, every GPU generation is going to get a super. Like, there's going to be super launches for, like, everything going forward. That's basically what that means for the consumer desktop GPUs. That's basically what that means. So, for example, what that means is, on the even numbered years, they'll introduce their 102 and maybe a 103, but that's optional. And in the earlier part of that year, they'll refresh the lineup. So they'll do the super stuff. That's what they'll do. Because that is GPU, that is this. So if you look at, where is this? Nvidia AI, one architecture, quantum, what is this? This is InfiniBand, and then the Ethernet stuff. What does this have to do with what? This is just A100, H100, H200. Oh, okay. See, they're doing like, instead of 2 years, they're gonna do. Isn't the H200 just the super version of the H100? H200 is an H100 Super, isn't that right? Isn't that all this is? Like, it's still the same node. It's still the same architecture. It's like nothing different. One architecture. It's all the same thing. This is only for data center and AI. Why are they switching to a 1-year cadence? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they switch a data center cadence to a 1 year? Like, that's dumb. Normally, enterprise upgrades slower than consumer. That doesn't... No, this is dumb. They're going to hurt themselves. This might be their big mistake. This might be where Nvidia flops. Like, doing this. They're just going to burn themselves out. Like, first of all, nobody in the enterprise upgrades every year. Like, that doesn't happen. But I guess they're doing this to try to out-innovate the competition. It's more of like, it has nothing to do with their customers, and it has more to do with the competition. I think that's what it is. Because, like, if somebody just bought H100, they're not going to upgrade to H200 for like 4 years. 3 years minimum. Realistically, it's more like, yeah, it's 3, 5, or 7 years. Remember what I told you guys? And I found this to be, strangely enough, this is true in the consumer market as well. But in the professional space, companies will operate on a 3, 5, or 7 year refresh cycle for these sort of products. So keep that in mind. 3, 5, or 7 years. But the consumers behave almost the same way, which is really weird when you think about it. Like, I wasn't expecting this to be true, but it actually is. Like, if I look at all the people I know that have gaming computers, and I looked at what they currently have and what they upgraded from and when they upgraded, they fall into that 3, 5, or 7 year category. And if they exceed the 7 year category, they only upgrade out of necessity, either because the GPU had something fail and it's no longer eligible for RMA, or they literally, like, it doesn't run the game they want to play anymore. Like, for example, when Alan Wake 2 first came out, the Pascal couldn't even handle mesh shaders at launch. Like, the developers eventually fixed that, but day one it didn't work. So people who had the GTX 980 Ti, they couldn't play Alan Wake 2 with their 980 Ti. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just didn't work. Like, doesn't work. And those people, like, how old is 980 Ti? Almost 9 years old. Almost 9 years old. That is a 2015 GPU. 9-year upgrade cycle, guys. Doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. So the individual who was trying to play Alan Wake 2 on a 980 Ti, and they were so angry and frustrated and blaming the developers because they said their flagship 980 Ti is so good, there's no reason why it shouldn't be able to handle this game. They were really angry with the developers of Alan Wake 2 when they couldn't play the game with their 980 Ti from 2015. Like, they were angry because they spent like $600+. They spent $600 on it. Why can't I play this game? Like, what is this? This is a scam. What is this stupid game? It's trash. This is garbage. thumbs down, 1 out of 0 stars on Steam. That's what they would do. That's the feedback that they would put to the game developer. You know, that's the sort of stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Like, after 7 years, no matter what you have, it's irrelevant to the developers. Like, they're not like, okay, look at well, I shouldn't say that because Dawn Trail it lists the GTX 970 as the minimum GPU. And that is a 2014 GPU. That GPU will be 10 years old later this summer. Yeah. Okay. And that's a 10-year-old GPU. So, maybe that's not true. But the thing is, most people will have upgraded by 7 years. By the 7-year mark, if they actually care about PC gaming in any capacity, they're most likely not going to keep their same GPU for more than 7 years. So, that's the reason why I always look at it like 3, 5, or 7. Like, if you're somebody who doesn't upgrade, if you don't fall into that category, in any of those categories, like if you don't fall into the 3-year, which also includes 4-year, by the way, 5-year, which also includes 6-year, or the 7-year, then you fall into one of two camps. You're only one of two camps. If you're not a 3, 5, or 7-year upgrade person, you are either a enthusiast, which means you upgrade more frequently than 3 years, which means you either upgrade every generation because each generation is 2 years, or which means your upgrade cycle is 2 years. Which pretty much means your upgrade cycle is every 2 years, which means you are an enthusiast because you upgrade every single generation. Does that make sense? So, or you are a casual gamer who doesn't actually even play games that often. If your GPU is like 9 years old, and you're complaining that you can't play Alan Wake 2 with your ancient 980 Ti, and your justification is the game is a scam, and I spent $600 on this GPU, therefore it should work. I mean, $600 9 years ago, nobody cares. It's irrelevant. So it's obsolete. That's just how it works. And then they'll try to say that, oh, it's Nvidia's planned obsolescence. No. 9-year-old GPU is not planned obsolescence. Like, that's just an old GPU. That's all that is. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's all there is to it. So basically 3, 5, or 7, and if you don't upgrade every 3, 5, or 7 years, you're either an enthusiast who upgrades every generation, or you're a casual gamer who doesn't even really play games that often, if you still have a 10-year-old GPU. Matt saying that's just delusional thinking. You would be surprised how many people think that way. It's one of those things where it's like the meme that I think of is like Patrick Stewart's facepalm. You know, like somebody blaming the developers of Alan Wake 2 as incompetent, leaving a thumbs down Steam review, and basically giving it a 0-star review, and basically bashing the game just because their ancient 980 Ti can't run the game properly. And then saying they spent all this money on their PC like 9 years ago, it should work, doesn't matter. It's like the game developers are stupid and incompetent, and blaming them. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of people like that. It's sad. It's the sad truth. It's what I call the cesspool of PC gamers. Like, there's a lot, not all PC gamers are like that, but unfortunately, there are a subset that are like that, which is unfortunate because it sometimes disproportionately makes a good game look bad on launch day because there's incompetent people out there that don't understand how technology works. That's just all there is to it. Hey, you've got X3D, and you have several questions. What's the best method to get? Well, I mean, you can just You can just message are you in the Discord? Just message in the Discord, and you either I'll help you or someone else will help you. And we got lots of people in the Discord that are very knowledgeable on setting up. Is this like a PC setup? What is this? Is this like overclocking related? 5 years would be your ideal upgrade. Nero's saying 5 years would be the ideal upgrade. Yeah, because I agree, Nero, because 5 years, regardless of what GPU you have, after 5 years, any upgrade would be a significant change. Like, we can even look at that. Like, for example, what is a 5-year-old? Let's see, what year? So we're in 2024. 5 years ago would be 2019. So let's look at, that means RX 5700 XT. So this is a GPU that is almost 5 years old. It will be 5 years old in July. So we're talking about 5 years. So if somebody is on a 5-year upgrade cycle, they probably have something like this, just to give an idea of what they would be using. So now, what is the direct upgrade would be a 7700 XT, just by going off of the name, not going off of the die. Now, I know we like to go by the die sometimes. Now, clearly these aren't the same. So if we're going by the same die, you're going to get a different picture. So this would be 256, 2560 cores. So what would be the closest current generation? I mean, see, even this with a 192 has more cores and more ROPS than a 5700 XT. And it has more VRAM. See, so a 5-year, even going from this to this is still like 60. This is going to be like what, 60 to 70%? What's the number? 65% uplift. So Nero's saying the 7800 XT. Yeah, that is a 100%, 101 if we use the exact number from Tech Power Up, which is not the be all, but it's an okay ballpark number. So 100% uplift, 100% faster. So to go 100% faster than a 5-year-old 5700 XT, they would go to this. And so here's the thing. This thing was priced at $399. So the direct comparison would be more, this would be more in line with that price-wise. So this is like a 65%. But if they go to a $500 uplift, they're getting a 100% uplift. So this is the reason why I like the 5-year upgrade cycle. The other thing, too, that you got to keep in mind is not everybody buys the same tier every single time. Like, there are people out there that will only ever buy a 7 class product, like a 3070 or a 5700. And they will never consider an 80 or an 800 or a 90 or a 900. They'll never consider those because they stay within a certain price point. So for them, they're going to get a 65% on average uplift going to one of these. But a lot of people, like what Nero was saying, you upgraded from a 5500 XT to a 7800 XT. That is like a massive upgrade. And oftentimes, the longer you wait, so what I have observed in the field is if somebody upgrades less frequently, so for example, 5 years, 7 years, or longer, they typically don't always buy the same family. So it's like, if they previously bought a 7 class product, they're okay with buying an 8 class product or a 9 class product. I know somebody who went from, just to use another example, because I like your example, because what I want to see on yours, 5500 XT, 5500 XT to a 7800 XT, that is 251% faster than that is a 251% uplift. So think about how much of a difference that experience in gaming is on a 7800 XT versus a 5500 XT. See, that's the reason why the longer you wait, the better the upgrade actually is, like in terms of the uplift. See, if we use another example, so the other example I wanted to use was, so I know somebody who, this was a couple of years ago, GTX 970. So they had a GTX 970 from 2014, and they upgraded in 2022. So they kept this GPU for 8 years. So they were over that 7-year category. But remember what I told you guys. Typically, 3-year, 3, 5, 7. 4-year falls into like 3-year. 6-year falls into 5-year. It's just they just waited a little bit longer. See, so 8-year is kind of like a 7-year upgrade. So this individual went from a GTX 970 all the way to a RX 6900 XT. So they went to the fastest AMD card of that generation. That is 306% faster. 306% faster. Like, and here's the kicker. This individual was using a GTX 970 to game at 1440p 144. They used this ancient GPU with a 1440p 144 hertz monitor, gaming monitor. So you can imagine the 970 was inadequate. Completely inadequate. So they went from this to a 6900 XT, which is a perfect GPU for 1440p, and they were completely satisfied. How much percent from a Vega 56? Vega 56 to a, what was it? To a 6700 XT? That is 70%. That's a 70% uplift. So from a Vega 56 to a 6700 XT, that is basically the same as going from a 5700 XT to a 7700 XT. It's a little bit better. It's 70% versus 65%. So same kind of upgrade. See, so that's why that 5, because Vega 56, that's a 2017 GPU. So that is what, 7 years old? That's a 7-year-old GPU. It'll be 7 years old this summer. So that is the 7-year upgrade if someone's going to that GPU. That's what I'm saying. Like, no matter what, if you're on the 5-year or the 7-year upgrade cycle, no matter what you do, like, you're going to get a performance uplift, a massive uplift, like in excess of at least 50%, if not more, significantly more. Am I giving you guys a right? Yeah, 70%. I was going to say, is that... Hold on, because this is a... Yeah, that's held at 100, so it's 70%. Yeah. Yeah, so that would... Vega... Anyone who's on Vega, they fall into the 7-year category. Anyone who's on 5700 series, they fall into the 5-year category. And likewise, if you're on 20 series was, they also fall into the 5-year category, 6-year category, because you have to remember the 20 series was fall 2018, and the Super series was 2019. So that's why I use that overlap. That's why I say 6-year is like 5-year, 8-year is like 7-year, because you have to account for the refresh. And the refresh is not significantly different from the original. Like, we're like, best case is like 10%. Yeah, you don't need VSOC doesn't need to be above 1.2. 1.2 is all you need. VSOC. So you said earlier, most people don't run VSOC, VDD SOC. That's VSOC at 1.3. Yeah, because they don't need it. You can all you gotta do is 1.2. 1.2 volt is all you need. Oh, what was the memory speed? I don't even know what was the memory speed. Is it 6,000? Oh, you're trying to do the timings. Perhaps we'll drop to this instead. Okay, so if you're running at 6400, you need to be in Gear 2 mode because 6400 is very rarely ever stable in Gear 1 mode. So you're going to need to use Gear 2 mode if you want to run 6400. Now, the reality is when you run in Gear 2 mode, it's actually it is worse, but it's not that much worse. Like I've done tests with Gear 1 versus Gear 2. It's actually not that significant. Like there is a loss in read, write, and copy, but it's really not that bad. I think it's like 2 to 3% loss in those metrics by running in Gear 2 mode. But if you just want it to run at 6400, just do Gear 2 mode. I wouldn't worry about it. Otherwise, you can try to do 6200. 6200 most of the time will run in Gear 1 stable, but from my own experience, and I've tested 3 different Ryzen CPUs, none of them can do 6400 in Gear 1 mode. Not a single one. Maybe I need to mess with voltages, but 2 of those are X3D. So it's like your options on voltages are very limited there. Try 6200 or just do 6000. 6000 Gear 1 will work. 6200 Gear 1 might work. 6400 Gear 1 only works if you win the Silicon Lottery. And in my case, I have 3 different Ryzen CPUs. None of them can do 6400 Gear 1 mode 100% stable. Like, they can boot into Windows. Like, all of them can boot into Windows, but they're not stable in Gear 1 at 6400. So for that, I have to drop to Gear 2 mode, and then they work. Realistically, I mean, I assume you watched the video that I did, or at least one of the videos I did, because I've lost count on my DDR5 videos at this point. But basically, just, I guess, remove all of this stuff. Okay, whatever. For AMD, you only really need, like, it's like Gear 1 at 6000. It's basically this or that. I know I'm oversimplifying this, but these are the kind of the what I call the thresholds or the inflection points or the optimization points. Like 6000 Gear 1, you see very good scaling as you ramp up. So meaning if from, I guess, to visualize this, if this is 6000 and this is 8000 and this is 4800, or no, we'll say 3600, because technically there's a bunch of people out there that are trying to run a lot of memory and we're stuck at like 3600. So from 3600 DDR5 all the way to 6000, you can do Gear 1 and the scaling is very good. The scaling is very good up to 6000. Then it kind of like drops. It doesn't really do much until you hit 8000. So it's like it goes, it's like it's almost like flat, the benefits, and then all of a sudden as you approach 8000 is like here. or maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration. It's actually more like it's like a vertical line. It just kind of goes up. Once it hits 8,000, it's like it's better again. So it's like if you were to trend this, you would see like there is a higher slope, but I don't use this slope because this slope's not realistic because you don't scale linearly as you approach 8,000. It's like all of a sudden at 8,000 it goes up versus like 7,800 or 7,600. You know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden there's a bump in 8,000, and that's because at 8,000 your fabric and your memory controller are basically synchronized. So you basically, you got to keep in mind the rule of thumb is at 8,000 F clock equals U clock. They are synchronized at 8,000. That's why I made that video, just to point that out. In the 6,000 speed, U clock equals, or I guess M clock equals U clock. You have those synchronized. That is the difference. But in general, it's much easier to just do Gear 1 6,000 and have M clock and U clock synchronized versus the latter, like 8,000. Because, first of all, 8,000 RAM is expensive compared to 6,000. 6,000 RAM is like so cheap now. So that's the reason why this isn't really worth the effort. I mean, you can do it. I have a video. You should check out my video. I'm assuming you watched one of the videos I did, but I don't know which one. I literally have a video comparing these two in gaming benchmarks. And 8,000 is a little bit faster, but it is more noticeably faster in the minimum FPS. The minimum FPS in games is about 5% faster when the RAM is running at 8,000 versus 6,000. But your average is only going up by like 2 to 3%. So that's the reason why it's really not worth it. That's why a lot of people say it's not worth it, because you got to spend a lot more money if you want RAM that's actually capable of running at 8,000. For gaming performance, 8,000 doesn't. No, that's not what I've seen. But yeah, the thing is, so I guess the thing that I'm not mentioning here is the timings. So if you're running 6,000, it's easier to optimize the timings and get gaming performance to match 8,000 versus like 8,000 just running with an XMP profile. So that's what is not being covered here. So that's why Shadow's saying for game performance 8,000 does nothing. It actually does matter if you don't optimize the timings. From my own personal testing, it does show a difference. But yeah, if you're comparing like tightly tuned 6,000, the difference is in favor of 6,000. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I didn't bother to do that, but I would assume that would be true. I don't see why it wouldn't be true. I don't bother to tune the timings because, to me, I mean, you can obviously do it if you want. That's considered overclocking, which you can do that. That's fine. But it's going to be trial and error. Because I have tried doing the tightening. I've done the BuildZoid tighten timing things, and my 96 gigabyte kit does not like his timings. So it's very specific to the RAM that you're using. So that's why I'm saying that's why I like to use general, easy to replicate results. Like if somebody shows you like their own personal timings that they did, that's all fine and great if you can copy and paste those, and if it actually works, that's good. But if it doesn't work, then the hardware is mismatched, or the binning is just not as good, or whatever the case may be. So that's why I don't that's why I don't really make content like showcasing specific timed things, because not everybody can get the same results. Like in my case, I want to turn on XMP and set it and forget it, and that's it. And I know it will work, and I know it's 100% stable, And if I can do that on 6,000 and if I can do that on 8,000, I will do that. And then I will test both of them side by side and I will show the results. And that's exactly how I test, because I know I want to dumb down the content enough so that if I'm doing a guide, it's idiot proof to a degree. It means that someone can literally just go in the BIOS, set the XMP, F10, let it train, and it works. And that's all they got to do. They don't have to try TREFI. They don't have to try changing all this other stuff. Now, if they want to do that, that's totally fine. That's overclocking. That's optimization. Go ahead and do that. You can definitely get better performance doing that. But at the end of the day, it's not guaranteed. As with anything in overclocking, it's not guaranteed. Your RAM kit might not like those optimized timings that someone else can do. In the case of my dual rank 2x 48 gig kit, it doesn't like the Buildzoid timings. My RAM is not stable with those TREFI values. I can't run my RAM like that. So it's either my binned RAM is just not as good or what. So that's the reason why I don't really go there. But I mean, I could do a video on that, but it's like, I don't know. I think that creates a lot of comments on the video of people trying it and then it not working. And then like having all kinds of questions about like, hey, you did this, but I did it and it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it just creates a lot of like troubleshooting scenarios that it's all, at the end of the day, it's all overclocking. It's trial and error. It's not guaranteed. So if you want to do that, that's fine. But that's not something that a video guide can, like, there's not going to be a video guide showing how to troubleshoot those type of things because it's literally just trial and error. The best way to optimize the 7950X 3D. Well, so the easiest way or the most optimized way? So the easiest way is to try to find a general negative curve optimizer that works for all the cores, which is typically going to be in the realm of like negative 15 to negative 30, somewhere in there. Some CPUs can do better. Some of them can go all the way down to like negative 40, negative 45. But you're pretty much guaranteed 2 cores to be able to do up to negative 35, negative 40. So that's why real optimization, and I'm probably going to make a new video on how to optimize these X3D CPUs using per core optimizer instead of just general all core optimizer. Because you can actually get better performance if you optimize on a per core basis as opposed to like globally set all the cores negative 30 and just do that. I mean, you can't, that's the easy way, but you can actually get better results if you do per core curve optimizer. So I would say the easy answer is set a curve optimizer of negative 30, set the load line calibration to, I think the value is turbo or level 3. If you're on an Asus, I think it's called level 3. If it's on Gigabyte, I think turbo is the preset. So you basically set LLC to one of those, not the highest one, but definitely not the lowest one because that's the default. So basically like somewhere in the middle where it still has V-droop, so it's not going to overvolt when the load is done, because that's not good for the CPU. So that's what I would do. It's like tune LLC, tune curve optimizer. That's basically it. And if it was me, I personally would run the RAM at 8,000 or 6,000 and try to run like if you're running 6,000, you want to run like the best timings possible. Otherwise 8,000, just forget about it. But not everybody's going to do 8,000. See? So, but you wanted my opinion. My opinion, and I'm telling you this because this is the way I have mine running, is like LLC is like level 3 or turbo. VSOC is 1.2. RAM is running at 8,000. Gear 2, because it has to be Gear 2. So F clock and U clock are the same. And that's it. I mean, curve optimizer negative 30, and that's basically it. That's all I do. But I might do a per core negative because I feel like you can get better results doing that. Because there's one of the guys on my Discord channel who tries to overclock for like world records, and he was telling me like if you want really good results, like you need to do per core curve optimizer, not just like some global for all of them. You don't do all core but that's really like if you're trying to overclock for like some sort of competition. But per core is definitely the way to go. Two of them typically can do negative 40, and the rest of them you'll do like negative 15, negative 25, somewhere in that range, and that's it. You find the two core. Basically, all you need to do, if you want to do per core curve optimizer, you have to find out which two cores boost the highest. Because on every chip, there are two cores that boost higher than all the other cores in a core complex, in a CCD. So you want to find out which two cores boost the highest. Those are the two cores that you put the most extreme negative offset. So in my case, negative 40 on those two. Then all the other cores are usually going to be like negative 15 or some easy number that you know that they can do. Like negative 15 is real easy. Negative 20, negative 25, somewhere in there. If you're lucky, maybe negative 30. You do that for all the remaining cores, and that's all you do for the curve optimizer. Then you set load line to level 3. Do not do level 1. That's terrible. And which is one of the reasons why, because in my video, the one thing I don't like about my own video is the example that I use is extreme, which on Gigabyte, it's okay to do that, but it's still not recommended. I would do high or turbo, which would be level 2 or level 3. Now on Asus, never use extreme. If you're on an Asus motherboard, never use extreme load line calibration because that is actually an overvolt. That means that you will actually remove the V-droop and you will add too much voltage, and that's very bad for the CPU long term. So never, ever, ever do extreme LLC on an Asus motherboard. So those sort of things were not covered in that video, which is one of the reasons why I want to make a newer optimization video for X3D. Yeah, so you have a motherboard that you do not want to use the extreme LLC. Like, that is an Asus motherboard, and you do not use extreme LLC on that motherboard. In fact, Asus has a graph, or they should have a graph, that shows the results of the LLC. Like, the actual... And it looks something like... It looks something like this. Actually, no, it doesn't look like that. It looks something like this. It's like level extreme on an Asus. And I don't know if this is true today, but it was definitely true in the past. And this is why Asus motherboards can technically kill CPUs. Extreme is like this. And then I think level 2 is flat. Then level 3 is like this. Level 4 is like that. Level 5 is like this, something like that. This is Asus. No one else does this except Asus. Or they used to. So this is level 1 or extreme. And then I don't know what the others are called. I think level 1 is the highest one. Maybe level 5 is the highest one. I forget. So this is basically for an Asus motherboard. Never use their extreme LLC because you're adding too much voltage. You're basically overvolting the CPU, which is not bad when the CPU is under load. The problem is as soon as the load drops to low load, you're going to get a voltage spike. You're going to get a voltage spike. If you were looking at it on an oscilloscope, you'll see like a big overvolt spike of like 1.5, 1.6 volts on the CPU, and that's very bad. So you don't want to do that. So anyway, did you watch my videos, by the way? These questions sound like they're questions that have already been answered in the video. The most popular video that I did for the X3D, I think that video has like 100,000 views, or very close to 100K views at this point. That video talks about all of these things that I just talked about. But clearly I need to make a newer video that covers per core optimize, or per core curve optimizer. You watched the video on the 23-minute video on... What's the 23-minute video on that, man? Why are all my older videos the ones that people are watching? No one's watching the newer ones. That sounds like an older video. Yeah, that's a video from November of last year. Man, I've made like so many better, newer videos since then that are more concise. Yeah, well, the optimization guide is an even older video. I think the optimization guide is from last spring. I know it was before all my Starfield videos, which were kind of a waste of making those videos. I'm trying to find that video right now. It has 100K views. Basically, the video that I did back in June of last year, it was almost a year ago, how to optimize Ryzen 7950 X3D. Basically, all the X3Ds. That video. Go watch that video. Although that's the video that I want to make a newer video. No, you can use LLC. You just don't use the highest one. Never use this top one. Never ever use that. Don't use the flat one either. Use like this, or at best, or I guess worse, that one. It's somewhere in the AI tweaker menu for Asus motherboards. I don't have an Asus motherboard, so I can't actually show any of that. So I was thinking for this next video, I might use an ASRock motherboard. Yes, all of this is in the BIOS. Just watch the video. All that's the BIOS, everything's in the BIOS. But yeah, so the way I run my X3D is... This is what I do for the RAM, and curve optimizer I think is like -30, and I'm using like level on Gigabyte. It's not like this on Gigabyte. So this was Asus. Gigabyte is like this. As far as I know, Gigabyte level, like this is level 1. This is level 2. And then it just goes down from there. Level 3. Level 4. All the way down to level 5. So Gigabyte does it like that, which I think is better. It's definitely safer. So this is how Gigabyte does it. So if I remake this video, I'm going to advocate for this one. Not this, not that, this one. Well, what I think they call the turbo one. Or maybe the turbo one is the L2. I don't know. It's going to be one that's like in the middle. Because the default is the lowest one. Default or auto is this one. Is always the lowest one, because it's the safest one. It has a lot of V-droop. But I would advocate for like L3 or L4, somewhere in the middle. You know what I'm probably going to do? I'm probably just going to say to use the middle one, because the middle one is the same for every single BIOS. I don't have to keep track of if they call it turbo or extreme or high. I just say the one in the middle. Whatever that one is. In this case, level 3. So basically level 3, and then we'll try to do like a per core negative curve optimizer. LLC stands for load line calibration. And that is the only thing that you have control over when it comes to directly influencing the voltage of the CPU, like the V core of the CPU. Now we're not talking about SoC. This is completely different. SoC is on the I/O die. We're not messing with that. We're talking about voltages that apply to the cores. I'm just gonna say use the middle one because it's the safest one. Like, you don't have to worry about overvolting. You don't have to worry about voltage spikes after the V droop recovers. So just use the middle one. if you are going to use LLC. But the thing is, you kind of need to use LLC if you're going for an extreme curve optimizer tune. Like, if you're gonna try like -40 on curve optimizer, because I think in my video I do -40. I don't know why I did -40, but I know why. It's because I'm using I'm using LLC plus curve optimizer, so I can get away with -40 because I'm backing up the V. I'm increasing or decreasing the amount of V droop because I'm using LLC. Otherwise, if somebody only did -40 and they didn't do the second step, which is the LLC, they might not be stable. They might crash in games or just have like the system be unstable at -40. Because I don't think every CPU can do -40 on all. Like, you can't do a global curve optimizer -40 for every single core on every single CPU. That's not guaranteed. So the only reason why mine works is because I'm offsetting that with LLC. The idle crash. Oh, you can't. Oh, well, yeah, mine. I don't think I tested -40 without LLC. So, but yeah, I think, like, if I make. I'm just trying to think how I'm going to frame this video, this newer video. It's basically, there's going to be like an easy mode and there's going to be like a hard mode. Easy mode is -30 with level 3. It's literally two things. Level 3 LLC, because it's in the middle. So it's basically, it's like a relatively moderate LLC. It's not default, which is trash. Well, it's not trash, but it's like, it's maximum V droop. And it's definitely not overvolting either, like level 1. So, level 3 plus -30 on the offset for all cores. That's the easy mode. Easy mode, -30 plus level 3. Hard mode is still going to be level 3, but it's going to be like, find out your individual core. Basically, do negative offsets for all the cores, and they're going to be different numbers. Probably going to be like -15 for like all the ones on one of the CCDs, and -40 for the two best ones, and -20 for like some of the other ones in the second CCD, or some combination of that. But I'd have to test it first offline and see if it works. So even with LLC1, you can't go above -30. Yeah, so that's why, I feel like in that scenario, that's where per core curve optimizer could probably help you. Because you might be able to do -40 on your two best cores, but then everything else needs to be on a lower value, like -20 or -25. That's what I would do, and I think that's what RK did. So I'm just using RK's. I don't think that they're his exact numbers. I'm just thinking in my own mind, like in my own head, what I would actually do if I was going to attempt per core curve optimizer. It would basically be -40 for my two best cores. The ones that basically boost the highest, those are the ones that I would do -40, and then everything else would be like anywhere from -15 to -25. If I'm gonna do -40 on the two best cores, I'm not gonna do -30 for all the others. I would do like a more conservative value, like -20, -15, maybe -25 at most. Yours could do negative 39. Because see, mine can do negative 40, but again, I did LLC Extreme, and I don't run my CPU like that anymore. Like, in fact, I think I only ran my CPU like that for like 1 month. And then after that, I did a BIOS update, and that cleared all the overclocks out. And then I ran it stock for like 8 months or the rest of that year. And then I only recently turned back on the curve optimizer, and I think all I did was negative 30 and level 4 or something. I don't even remember what my LLC was. I might not even use LLC. I might just did negative 30 and that was it. Because I wasn't sure if negative 40 would work without LLC. And Idle, you would crash if you tried negative 40. Yeah, I have to go back and test mine again. I have not used negative 40 basically since I made that video. I made that video and I guess I left it at negative 40 with the LLC on extreme, which is not good, until I did the BIOS update. I think it was literally like 2 weeks, because I think I did that video when it was around the time that Agisa 100B came out. I think it was around that time, and then I think like Agisa 1007C came out, and I immediately upgraded to the C patch, and that cleared out that overclock, so I didn't have that negative 40 thing after that. So I don't remember if I had the idle bug or not. I don't think I did. Not on the Ryzen 9. Now, I have not tried Curve Optimizer on my Ryzen 7. So I might try it on the Ryzen 7. The 7800X3D, and see what I can do on that one. But the Ryzen 9, the 7950X3D, that one I don't remember an idle crash at all on that. But maybe the 7950X3D is the best binned silicon. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Or maybe I just have a good chip, and it's the more expensive product. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Who knows? You're not gonna notice any difference. What do you have set for LLC? Or are you guys even using LLC? Because I would definitely, like, if I was gonna try negative 40 again, I would definitely not even bother unless I'm using LLC. Yours is set to medium. Is medium the equivalent to level 4? Or is medium level 3? It's one of those two, right? I think, if I remember correctly... Hold on, I think I remember the names now. It goes... Extreme... Hold on. Okay, goodbye, all this graphics card nonsense. Delete. Okay, I think I remember the names now. L1 equals extreme. L2 equals turbo. L3 equals high. L4 equals medium. L5 equals auto default low. I think that's what that means. Level 3 on Asus. Okay, I think gigabyte. These are gigabyte. Those are gigabyte terms. Level 3 on Asus. Okay, so that's like gigabyte high. So those correlate to what is shown here. So just to give you guys an idea, the lower this is, the safer it is. The less voltage is added during heavy load, which means it droops. This graph indicates drooping. This is the voltage. The y-axis is the voltage. So you can see the x-axis is the level of the LLC applied. So for a given level of LLC, this is my x-axis. I don't think you guys understand that. My voltage drops. So if my X is level 5, my Y is way down here. It's like a low voltage. The higher the level, the higher the voltage. So you can really never use level 1 long term. So that's the one thing I don't like about that video that I made is I'm showing extreme, and that is so not the way you should run the CPU 24/7. So that's why I definitely want to make a follow-up video and link to that video from the old video. Because it's high time I make that video, because I realized that video has 100k views, and for me 100k views on a video is a lot of views. Like, that's a lot of views on one video for a small channel like mine. So that means that there's a lot of people out there that might potentially try Extreme LLC, and I don't want them running it like that all the time. So we're definitely going to change that. We're going to make a newer one. Basically, I'm going to advocate this one, and we're going to try per core optimizer. There'll be two different, there'll be like easy mode and hard mode. Easy mode, negative 30 all core, level 3 LLC. Or I guess, hold on, let me make it even easier. LLC equals level 3. Curve optimizer equals negative 30. That's easy mode. That's literally all that needs to be done. 2 things. 1, 2, done. That's it. That's easy mode. That's why it's called easy mode. Hard mode. Hard mode is still LLC equals level 3. That's not going to change. But what changes is 2 best cores equal negative 40. Or maybe negative 30. I mean, it kind of depends. Like, I would still try negative 40 and see what it does. Because the best cores are usually the ones that can boost the highest momentarily with the least voltage. And then everything else equals like negative 15. Or, you know, somewhere in the range of negative 15 to negative 25. We'll call it negative 25. Like, this is hard mode. This is not extreme. This is hard mode. Anything in that range. So basically this is what I'm going to show. That, and then we're going to show this. But to make this part, I don't even know if I'm going to make this. I think I probably should. Or at least maybe do it with the 7800X 3D. Just to show how per core optimizer works. Because I feel like not enough people have shown how to do that. Okay, let me see. Okay. Yeah, that's probably going to be it for this live stream. There wasn't really, what else did I want to, okay, Computex expectation. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen. I hope we get a Zen 5 reveal. And I don't know what Nvidia is going to announce, but I know they're going to do something at the beginning. So it is in the, wait, isn't it in the thing? Oh, I guess it's not. Where is it? No, it should be in the video. Hold on. It's in the description of the video. It's in the just like in this live stream. Just click on the description of the video, and you'll see the Discord link at the bottom. Okay. The easiest thing to do is just watch the video. But don't use Extreme. So the one thing about my video that you don't follow is you don't use the Extreme LLC. You use the third one from in that graph. Regardless of what motherboard it is, you use the third one or the fourth one in that graph. Yeah, Asus is auto level 1. Yeah, Asus, I think they just do level numbers now. So you would just do level 3 or level 4. And that's it. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this live stream. I said it was going to be a short one. There isn't really anything to talk about. So, that's basically it. Just checking through here. Yeah, okay. So we already talked about the 50... Well, we didn't talk about the 5090, but we talked about Nvidia's naming convention. I don't think they're going to announce any new cards at CES. I think they're going to talk about AI, and maybe they're going to talk about like the roadmap for their AI processors, if anything. But that's where I think that Nvidia's focus is going to be for Computex. Now, for AMD, I would like to see the Zen 5 reveal. I don't know what they're going to do. I have no idea. But I would hope that they would reveal the Zen 5 and the new motherboards. And that's basically it. And then I don't know what Intel will do. Intel's going to do something as well. Intel might actually announce their new... Well, I don't know what Intel's going to announce. Intel might announce like roadmap stuff for the mobile CPUs. And they might announce Arrow Lake desktop. I think it's kind of early for them to do that, but they could do it. Because I think that the rumors around their Arrow Lake has started to crop up. There was one that I saw earlier this week. I'm trying to find the article now. I can't find it. All I know is that Intel is... Okay, hold on. I think I found it. Well, I don't think this is it. This was May 20th. Okay, it might actually be this one. Hold on. Let's go to this real quick. Intel confirms Arrow Lake S, Arrow Lake HX, Arrow Lake H on track for Q4 for desktop and laptop. Now, Intel confirmed that its next-gen Arrow Lake S is on track for Q4. I mean, I've been saying this pretty much since the year started. So, did they really confirm this, or is somebody just taking something out of context? Which is very, very common with a lot of these articles. So they're going Z 890 or Z 890. Here are the CPUs. They come with the Lion Cove and the Skymont, which means these are brand new architecture. This is why I told people don't buy 14th gen. It's a scam. It's a literal scam. You got 2 generations out of Z790, aka LGA 1700. You got 2 CPU generations. You got 12th gen and you have 13th gen slash 14th gen. Oh, and by the way, 13th gen is end of life. They discontinued it, which means you can only buy, later this year, you'll only be able to buy 12th gen or 14th gen, because 13th gen is basically no longer manufactured. They still manufacture 12th gen, and this is mainly because of server. It's because Sapphire Rapids uses the Golden Cove performance core, the P core. And Golden Cove is 12th gen. So 12th gen continues to exist up until this day, even though it is an architecture from 2021. So, knowing that, we also know that Gracemont is the name of the E-core of the current generation. Gracemont existed on the Alder Lake, 12th gen, and the Raptor Lake, 13/14th gen. So basically, they did 1 generation of E-core and 2 generation of P-core. They did Golden Cove, which is 12th gen's P-core, and they did Raptor Cove, which is 13 and 14th gens P-core. So that is basically what you got out of LGA 1700. So moving forward, LGA 1851, I think is the name of the thing. I'm pretty sure it's 1851. It's LGA 1851. I know it's right. Okay, so it's 1851. I don't see it on here, but it doesn't matter. So those are going to have Core Ultra 9, 285K, 280. How are you supposed to say that? 285K? The 285K or the 285K? Or the 285,000? Lion Cove slash Skymont. Lion Cove is a successor to Raptor Cove and Golden Cove. Skymont is a successor to Gracemont, which never changed. I mean, although it was overclocked for Raptor Lake. Now, they claim 24 cores, 24 threads, which implies no more hyperthreading. So people are probably asking, why is hyperthreading gone? Because of Spectre and Meltdown and all those speculative execution vulnerabilities that kept plaguing their CPUs over and over again, and having to patch those with BIOS updates constantly. So they were like, finally, you know what? We don't need it. We don't need hyperthreading anymore. So if that's true, there's no more hyperthreading, which means this is a 24 core, 24 thread. Now, I don't know what that means for their multi-thread performance, because in order for a Core Ultra 9 285K, I'm going to call it the 285K. I don't know what to call it. I assume it's 285K. In order for this to outperform a 13900K current generation flagship, in fact, I'm probably just going to start calling my 13900K a 14900K. It's like, okay, this, you see this thing here, this box, this is a 14900K. So I have a 14900K, figuratively. So in order for this to beat my 14900K, which I can easily just set it to run like with the whole thing with the power limits now, I can literally turn my 13900K into a 14900KS and legit call it 14900KS, because if you follow Intel's new guidelines, none of them run the way they used to. Like, none of them run the way they used to. Not even the KS SKUs run the way they're supposed to anymore. So it's a huge mess. It's a massive mess right now, in terms of trying to standardize performance metrics on Intel CPUs. So the point is, in order for this 24-thread next-gen part to outperform my 14900KS that I apparently have now, without paying a dime. Like, apparently now I have a 14900KS. The 14900KS, in order for this to beat my 14900KS, this thing's single thread performance has to be so much better than my 14th gen CPU that it has to make up the difference for the lack of those extra 8 threads. Because with the hyper-threading, I would have 32 threads on my 14900KS. Whereas with this thing, you don't have that. So I don't know how this is going to... Maybe it's one of those things where Intel's just going to have to take the loss on multi-thread in Cinebench and just say, go back to what they were doing last time when they were losing in Cinebench benchmarks and say that Cinebench is an invalid benchmark. Because when Intel was losing in Cinebench, they basically said Cinebench is a pointless benchmark and it shouldn't be used to gauge the performance of CPUs. So, but then when they started winning in Cinebench, they basically flip-flop on that benchmark. So maybe they'll go back to that. Maybe it'll become, oh, well, Cinebench, no one needs to look at that because it's kind of a pointless benchmark. You know, maybe that'll become the opinion. Who knows? Or the marketing fluff from them on that. But anyway, the point is, I don't see how these parts are going to compete with their last gen parts in multi-thread because they lack hyper-threading. So they would have to have significant uplifts to the single thread for them to make up the difference. And maybe they can do that. Maybe they can do that. It'll be interesting to see. So yeah, they might announce these. Who knows? But they're not supposed to come out till Q4. So I really don't think we're going to see anything significant from Intel on this. What I really want to see from Intel, I want to see Battle Mage. Like, here is my, this is the last thing, and we're going to end the stream. Very last thing, and we're going to end the stream. So let me go back to Paint. Delete all of this. My list, this is my ideal list for Computex. Like, this is what I want to see. Nvidia announces the next gen AI enterprise GPUs. I want to see this because I already know they're not gonna announce like any consumer GPUs. So if I say, like, this is my ideal list. This is what I want to see. Not that they'll actually show, but what I want them to do. Now, I'm not even saying Blackwell consumer because I know that is not going to happen. Like, if that happens, that would be so off script by Nvidia that, yeah. Even I'll be surprised if they do that. Okay, from AMD... announces Zen 5 on desktop and new chipset. That's what I want to see from AMD. And then number 3, Intel announces Battle Mage GPU. There, that's it. Just these 3 things. I will be satisfied if I get these 3 things. I want to see Nvidia announce the new enterprise. Basically what that one article talking about how they want to do like a 1-year thing for the AI. Like, I don't know how they're going to do that. I want to see how they're going to actually attempt to do that. So, and this would play into that perfectly. So that's what I expect them to address. AMD, I mean, it's high time we start getting some more news on Zen 5. Considering that Turin on the server side is slated to release in Q3, like late Q3 probably, I would hope that Zen 5 shows up sometime before Turin, rather than like the exact same time. That'd be kind of weird. But who knows? Maybe the thing with AMD though that has happened recently over the last 2 years, AMD has done so well in data center. In the data center, AMD has had these massive wins in the data center recently. So it's kind of like it's similar to Nvidia, where Nvidia has had all of this massive interest and spike in demand for their GPUs due to AI. AMD has seen a lot of success now and spikes for demand in data center CPUs like Epic server based CPUs. Hence the reason why now there's like an Epic on AM5 apparently. So they have done so well in the enterprise market that the unfortunate thing is they might actually prefer to launch the next gen architecture on in the enterprise space in the server market first rather than on the desktop space. Now, I don't think they'll do that, but I can understand why they would do that or opt to do that if they decide to. The only reason why I don't think that's in their best interest is because if they let Zen 5 on desktop launch toward the end of the year, so like let's say Q4, that then I think it puts it too close to Intel's Arrow Lake. And when you have two CPU generations launching together from two different competitors, obviously the one who ends up being able to deliver on product volume is the one who will end up outcompeting in this sort of market, because Intel will be able to volume ship a ton of new CPUs to the AIB, like the system integrators and the system builders and the OEM providers for desktop applications. So think like Dell, Lenovo, HP, Asus, etc. All those guys. And Intel historically can outperform AMD in the sheer fact that they can outmaneuver them in the supply chain, historically. And that's the problem that AMD is going to run into if they launch Zen 5 too close to Intel's Arrow Lake. Regardless of whichever one is better than the other from a performance, from an efficiency, doesn't really matter. Like if they launch close together, Intel kind of defaults to the win, even if it's worse, or even if it's only like marginally the same or whatever it ends up being, right? Like because Intel can just outmaneuver them in the supply chain. So that's why I don't think AMD should launch at the end of the year. But they could if they opt to just put everything into Turin's launch and do that one first. I don't know. I think they should try to gain first mover advantage in consumer this time around. I mean, they kind of did that with Zen 4, but not really, because technically I would consider Intel the first mover when it came to DDR5. They were the very first ones with DDR5 motherboards. Now, granted, DDR5 was so stupidly expensive in 2021 that pretty much everybody that bought Alder Lake opted for DDR4 motherboards. So you fast forward a year later, and AMD launches Zen 4, which is DDR5 exclusive. So anyone who wants to go to Zen 5 or Zen 4, aka Ryzen 7000, they're basically forced to go DDR5, so they have to spend the higher price for the RAM and do a RAM swap. But thankfully, at that point in time, it wasn't as bad as it was a year ago when Alder Lake launched. But it was still pretty bad. DDR5 did not become affordable, I'll say, until the very end of 2022, which is literally like a few months after AMD launched Zen 4. And the flip side of that is literally a month after Zen 4 launched, Intel launched 13th gen and did exactly what I just said. They volume flood the market with all these 13th gen SKUs, and that's the reason why people go buy a pre-build, and it just so happens to have like an Intel CPU in it, just because the system integrator bought like I don't know, like 500 Intel CPUs and maybe like 200 AMD ones. So, you know, stuff like that. You think Zen 5 desktop is September? I wouldn't be surprised. I really think it should be sooner than September, but if it's in September, it's still within what I said. Because you remember what I said, guys, and I've been saying this for over a year now. I said that Zen 5 will be a Q3 2024 launch. I've been saying this on multiple live streams. You can go and find the timestamps on all the old live streams. I don't think it will move outside that window. I think if it does, then it's only going to be a negative thing if it does. I don't think launching in Q4 for Zen 5 is a good idea. Unless AMD, so okay, the only counter argument that can prove me wrong in that statement is if AMD truly has a winner on their hands. Basically, if AMD has another Zen 3, but this time around it's just Zen 5, then they can afford to go to Q4 and go toe to toe with whatever Intel puts out there, and they don't really need to worry. But it basically has to be like a Zen 3 perfect storm all over again, and I highly doubt that's going to happen this time around. There's too much unpredictability with what Intel's going to do. So I don't want both of them to launch in the same quarter. I want them in different quarters. I want AMD in ideally I want AMD in Q3 and I want Intel in Q4. And it's pretty obvious that Intel's going to be in Q4 considering if you look at the historical launch pattern for Intel, it's pretty much every year they launch something and it's always Q4. Look at Alder Lake. Alder Lake Q4 2021. Raptor Lake Q4 2022. Raptor Lake Plus, Q4 2022 or 2023. So it's Intel has a very consistent launch cycle now. So they're very predictable. But what is unpredictable is how their CPU will perform. Will it perform extremely well in single thread, but lack in and underperform in multi-thread? That could be a possibility based off of all the rumors. How will it perform in energy efficiency? Now that they're moving to this tile-based approach, how will the tile/chiplet-based approach that Intel's doing compare to their current generation monolithic design, which is definitely it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of energy efficiency. So, how will Intel address these metrics? I honestly think Intel is actually the more interesting one because this time around, because Zen 5 is more of a refinement, from what I understand, over Zen 4, whereas Intel's next-gen CPU is a completely new architecture. Everything's new. Sockets new. P-cores are new. E-cores are new. They're probably going to have NPUs on there this time around. So they've got like 3 different types of cores. Assuming they bring the third type to the desktop. They might only have that in laptop. So no one cares about how good their integrated GPU performs. I think that's kind of irrelevant for the sort of segment that they're targeting with these CPUs. But that's another thing that can be graded. So I think Intel's going to be the more interesting launch this time around. Whereas I think 2 years ago, Zen 4 was definitely the more interesting launch versus the Raptor Lake, which launched a month after it. But that doesn't mean that AMD can't outperform Intel. There is something to be said for having a more refined, mature platform versus a brand new early adopter, guinea pig beta tester type thing, which is basically what Intel's CPUs might end up being this time around, since everything's new. So basically, the way I see it is this time around, the roles are reversed compared to how it was 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we had AMD go to a brand new socket, brand new DDR5 memory controller, brand new Zen 4 architecture, First time using LGA in a consumer desktop platform as opposed to PGA. So basically, 2 years ago, AMD, everything was new. Like everything was new. So that was very interesting. And then you had Intel Raptor Lake. It was basically a refresh of the, well, it's not a refresh. Same exact E-cores with an overclock, and they had next generation P-core. So this time around, it's basically like AMD is the one doing the 13th gen launch, and Intel's the one doing the Zen 4 launch, if that makes sense. I hope you guys understand what I mean when I say that. Basically, what I'm saying is this year is the role reversal of 2 years ago. 2 years ago, AMD did everything new. Intel was doing refined next gen upgrade with 13th gen replacing 12th gen. This time, AMD is doing what Intel did. AMD is taking Zen 4 and upgrading it to Zen 5 retaining the same socket, but there are newer architectural changes to Zen 5, just like how Raptor Lake had different Raptor Cove versus Golden Cove. So basically now AMD is doing what AMD is in Intel's position 2 years ago. Intel is now in AMD's position 2 years ago. Intel's doing everything new. New socket, new P-core, new E-core, new everything. New first time doing chiplets. So in desktop. So that's why 2 years ago, AMD was the more interesting one. But it came with teething issues. You know, like people were complaining about like sleep mode not working if you turned on Expo or XMP. That took BIOS updates to fix. The memory training, all that stuff. You know, it took like several BIOS updates to fix all of that. So that was how it was for the new. That's what it was like being an early adopter going to a brand new socket, brand new memory, everything new. So this time around, now what's it going to be like with the Intel early adopter? Is the Intel early adopter going to have to do brand new socket, brand new BIOS? Expect to update your BIOS at least twice every single month for the first 6 months, because that's kind of how it is every time you get a new socket. So whereas with Zen 5 is going to be the easier upgrade, because even if you don't even have Zen 4, you literally just buy a motherboard. It has a mature BIOS. You put the Zen 5 CPU and everything just kind of works. That's pretty much how it's going to be this time around. They will have NPUs on desktop. Microsoft is forcing Intel's hand to have 30, 40 tops across everything. Really? Is that even necessary, though, for Copilot? Can't Copilot just run on the GPU? Can't it just use GPU acceleration for that? I mean, that's what Nvidia's saying. Nvidia's trying to spread all this FUD about Intel's and AMD's CPUs being garbage for AI. Like Nvidia says that Intel's NPUs are trash for AI. Like they're only good for, in Nvidia's words, basic AI. And for real AI, you need GPUs to run the real AI workloads. So, like, what is someone going to do if they don't have a new CPU with NPU? Like, how is somebody going to run Windows 12 with Copilot, like, permanently embedded in there and you can't remove it? Well, I guess you probably can with some registry changes. But for the average user, Windows 12, you're stuck with Copilot no matter what. It's always listening to you. It's always watching you. It's always, like, watching what you type and watching what you look at. Watch what games you play, and it's always going to, like, know everything about you. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is a CPU that doesn't, like, okay, how is this CPU going to handle, this CPU does not have an NPU. How is this going to handle the Copilot and the Windows 12? That CPU, or this CPU, or even this CPU? Like, how are these CPUs supposed to handle the AI stuff when these CPUs don't have NPUs? Aren't they just going to run off the GPU? Yeah, so then what's the point of having the NPU on a desktop if you have a GPU that can do it better anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get Nvidia's argument. Nvidia's basically talking smack. They're saying, and this is because Nvidia doesn't have a CPU in the x86 space. So they're basically saying, like, who cares about the new 15th gen NPU? It's complete garbage. The GPU does it better anyway. Like, that's what they're saying. So it's like, is it valid? Yeah, I guess. I mean, it makes sense. Because if someone has an old CPU, old as in like Zen 4 or 13th, 14th gen, because yes, according to Intel, 14th gen is so old now, like, you should be considering upgrading. That doesn't have NPUs. So I can see how the marketing is going to go on this, guys. I can already see how the marketing is going to go. It's going to be all in on AI. Nvidia will have CPUs in laptops next year. What type of CPUs are those? Oh, you mean the ARM things? Those ARM CPUs? I feel like nobody cares because those aren't x86. Like, okay, let's put it this way. If you want to play games, I mean, unless the game is like really good with the ARM instruction set, then maybe it's relevant to a high-end PC, but I don't see that ever being a thing. I mean, at least not in the next couple of years, because that would require. Well, okay, let's unpack that a little bit. So you do realize that the way Microsoft Windows is kind of they almost have a monopoly on the PC gaming space. So for all assumptions here, we're referring to this from the lens of a PC gaming focused use case. So Windows today heavily favors x86 over ARM or anything else. Now, Microsoft doesn't want it to stay that way. They want it to be more hardware agnostic. They want to go even further in the opposite direction as Apple. Because what Apple has done, Apple has basically gone even more vertically integrated than they used to. So Apple used to use Intel CPUs. Now they make their own CPUs. So they have the M series processors, and these are like ARM-based processors. So Nvidia's CPU is going to be similar to an Apple CPU. But you do realize that doesn't mean that it's going to be extremely good for PC gaming, because that's going to depend on Windows. But Microsoft wants to move away from x86. Otherwise, why would anybody even care to consider ARM-based architectures? You see what I'm saying? So that's the reason why Intel could be walking into a landmine here, or a minefield, I should say, with this ARM stuff, because they've already been burned by Apple, with Apple kind of like going their own way and doing the M series, and now Intel lost all the revenue for Apple's entire product stack, essentially. So they lost that, and there's no way they can get that back, knowing how Apple is. So then you also have Nvidia trying to make an ARM-based CPU, or I guess they are making an ARM-based CPU, apparently. And then AMD is also making an ARM-based CPU. So you've got Nvidia and AMD, which are continuously trying to push the curve or they're trying to like steer the industry in different directions that are kind of like rubber banding, pulling Intel along, regardless of whether Intel wants to go along for the ride or not. Intel was so behind on performance in the Apple space, not so much in the PC space. Why was Intel behind in the Apple space? Or I guess, let me rephrase that. How was Intel behind in the Apple space? You have to explain what you mean by that. Relative to what? What else was there? Perf per watt? Oh, so that was the concern that Apple had? So it was battery life. Okay. So how did Apple determine that, though? So Apple determined that using what as the comparison? Like how a MacBook compares to a Windows laptop? Oh, okay. So they're looking at it from a usability and customer experience standpoint, and performance per watt, how hot the thing gets. Yeah, okay, I get it now. Okay, yeah, because the reason why I'm saying that needs to be explained a little bit more is because you like Apple's a closed system, right? So it's like you don't really have anything else to compare it to because it's all running the same Apple operating system and it's like literally an Intel exclusive system historically. I mean, obviously there's the M series now, but it wasn't always like that. Like today, we can clearly show Apple's own processors make Intel's processors look like garbage on their own operating system on iOS X. However, Apple is the one who owns the operating system, and Apple's making their own CPU ARM-based architecture. So therefore, you put one plus one equals two. So you get Apple plus Apple. They know what their operating system, how their operating system is designed. They can literally make the CPU run it as efficiently as possible. That's the reason why, I mean, Apple's notorious of being able to squeeze the most amount of performance out of the least amount of hardware when you think about it. Look at the iPhone. Look at how much RAM an iPhone has versus an Android phone. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. On average, iPhones have significantly less system RAM than an equivalent Android phone, and oftentimes they still perform basically the same. Meanwhile, you take an Android phone that has 4 gigabytes of RAM versus an Android phone that has 12 gigabytes of RAM, and the Android phone with the higher RAM is going to perform a lot better in a lot of different applications than an Android phone that only has 4 gigs of RAM. Meanwhile, an iPhone with 4 gigs of RAM performs a lot better than an Android phone with 4 gigs of RAM. So just that's what I mean by Apple is able to extract the most amount of performance out of the least amount of hardware. So that translates into a lot of things. That translates into profit margins. That translates because they're not selling you as much as what like a competitor would have to basically fill into their machine to get similar performance metrics. So it's kind of a positive feedback loop that helps Apple at the end of the day. And going with the M series product or processor is the exact same thing. Like they're able to extract the most amount of performance out of a relatively lightweight thing that is so well optimized for certain things like video encoding, for example. Like M1 is like, or M2, all of them are like really good at this stuff. So they really understand their customer base and the most common use cases that their platform is involved in. And I feel like that is something that Apple is really, really strong and good at. And that's one of the reasons why they're successful. It's not just the brand image. There is a reason why, somebody once said, there is a reason why things are the way they are. So there's a reason why Apple has kind of a cult following, and to an outsider who understands hardware might look at it like, oh, Apple's just literally like siphoning money off of their fans for like, you know, not a whole lot of hardware at the end of the day. Although they do have some decent hardware at the very, very, very high end of the line. Like they have really good displays. The Mac monitors, they usually have good displays. They're pretty much above average, I would say. And they know, for some reason, Apple knows what are the most important things to put in the product that make the user think the product is good. I'll give you guys an example. Apple historically has good speakers in their laptops and their phones. Back in the day when all the HP laptops, the Dell laptops, had these tinny, whiny, terrible, trash built-in speakers in the laptop, Apple's MacBook had like speakers, sound quality that was so much better than the average laptop that might even be priced the same as the MacBook. And, you know, like, what? How? Why? How? You know, like, and then the screen, they were the first to coin the phrase Retina display. The Retina display. You know, like they know how to market stuff. Apple doesn't let you multitask or run as many apps in the background like Android. Well, the reason why they do that is for, well, again, this plays into user experience. They do that to prevent instability. I will say, now I don't have an iPhone. I've never owned an iPhone, but I know a lot of people that do have iPhones. And the thing that has always impressed me with iPhone, as someone who has been a long-term Android person myself, the thing that has always impressed me with iPhone is that for some reason, Apple is just on the ball when it comes to memory management for their file system, everything. Like, they just do it better than Android. I don't know why or how, and why nobody from that's not Apple can figure this stuff out, but they just do a better job. I don't know why. Maybe it's because they're in a closed ecosystem, so it's more like a game console. So they're confined. They work around specific system constraints, and that's probably why it just works so seamlessly. The way you look at it, Intel has recouped so much ground in the performance race, but they needed to get the power consumption down. They recouped so much Oh, you mean, well, they recouped so much performance against Apple? Against who? Intel recouped performance from Apple? In desktop against Apple? I think Intel's not really relevant for Apple anymore. They recouped so much ground in performance. Have they recouped so much ground? Oh, you saying from AMD? I don't know about that. I would say both of them are pretty much the same right now. The way I look at it, they're both the same. And I'm saying that as someone who has used all the systems. I'm someone who has literally all the systems. So I can speak from my own experience. I have the Intel current i9. I have the AMD Ryzen 9. I have the Ryzen X3D. So I'm speaking from my own personal experience using all these different machines, and you're going to have to elaborate what you mean when you say Intel has recouped so much ground in the performance race, because I don't see that. That's not what I'm seeing. In what area have they recouped? Like, when you say recouped, that implies that they were behind. They were behind relative to what? Intel was behind so you're basically saying Intel was behind AMD, and they recouped so much ground in performance. With what, though? With this upcoming, are we assuming this upcoming CPU is doing this, or what? What is doing this? What is recouping the lost ground And where did they lose ground outside of data center? I don't understand. Like, that to me doesn't make any sense. Because that's not reality. That sounds like, I don't know. I don't know what recouped from what? Relative to what? That's what I'm asking. So you're saying Intel recouped a lot of performance relative to AMD. Okay, with what? With Alder Lake? With Raptor Lake? With the future CPU? They recouped the shame after AMD destroyed them? I don't think AMD destroyed them. I mean, I would say right now, personally speaking, as someone who has all the CPUs, I personally use AMD as the daily driver. AMD's the better, it's the more refined system from a user experience point of view. I'll give you an example. When I play games with this CPU, my room tends to run hotter, so I start like it feels more humid and nasty in the room. Also, the fans on my CPU cooler are constantly running at maximum speed, and they're very loud, and I can hear them even though I'm wearing headphones if I'm using the Intel CPU. So from a user experience point of view, that is a negative aspect of using the Intel CPU. Now, compared that with an X3D. This is a Ryzen 9. This is like the most high end. This is the 7950 X3D. So this only pulls like 50 watts. So this thing, if I'm gaming on this, I don't even hear my computer. The only thing that I can hear is the graphics card. I don't hear the case fans. I don't hear the CPU fans. I don't hear anything. The computer is dead silent while gaming uncapped FPS, like no holds, limits, nothing. So, and the room doesn't heat up. The only heat is coming from the graphics card. So, from a user experience point of view, this is actually the better product to use on a daily basis. I can only imagine if I were, let's say I was a live streamer on Twitch, if I was like streaming a game 8 hours or 12 hours a day, because typically if you're new to Twitch, the only way you're going to get discovered, you literally have to stream 12 plus hours per day, 7 days a week, until you can build up at least like, 2-digit concurrent followers watching. So it's like, if I had to do that, which CPU do you think I would stream 12 hours a day, 7 days a week on Twitch? It's a no-brainer. Am I going to sweat in a sauna, or am I going to just use this? It's a no-brainer, guys. Like, come on. Let's be real here. Now, you can do things to the Intel CPU to make it run cooler. I already have a video how to fix the crashes. That also makes the CPU run quieter and cooler. But guess what? You lose 16% performance if you do what I show in the video. You literally turn this thing in to a CPU that performs worse than the Ryzen in single thread, or at least, at best, equal to the Ryzen, and at worst, significantly worse in multi-thread, which is where things like streaming and video encoding and all the sort of content creator tasks actually matter. So, like from a user standpoint, I don't think this is the better product. I think the reason why more people have this is because what I said earlier still applies. Intel volume floods the market with product because they make their own chips. AMD, on the other hand, They have to buy capacity from TSMC just like Nvidia and Apple and Qualcomm and like everybody else who makes silicon designed parts that want to be on the latest and greatest node. So you know what they have to do? They have to get in line like everybody else and wait for TSMC to make their stuff. Meanwhile, Intel makes it themselves, so they can make as many of these as they want. AMD has to buy wafers, and that's the reason why the sad reality is even if AMD has a better product, and in this case they do, as far as I'm concerned, at least with this generation, Intel can still outperform them in sheer like supply chain. They can literally like manufacture so many CPUs and sell them off at discounted rates to system integrators like Maingear, Omen, Alienware, Legion, and then all the other like desktop like Dell, HP, Asus, whatever. You know, all the pre-builds. They can basically flood the market of pre-builds with their own CPUs. And that's the reason why the reality is a lot of people who don't know anything about technology, who don't know anything about like PC gaming, they'll most likely end up with an Intel CPU 2 times out of 3 because they'll buy some random pre-built from Dell. They'll buy like an Alienware and it'll come with an Intel CPU because Dell paid really cheap discounts to get like 1,000 CPUs from Intel. Meanwhile, they had to buy, you know, like 200 AMD CPUs at like slightly below market value based off of discounting. So, you know, like that's the reality of how the CPU market is. So, that's just how it is, guys. Sorry. I mean, I've got all the CPUs. I'm speaking from somebody who literally has used and tested extensively all these CPUs. So this is like the full unfiltered reality of how it actually is in the real world with supply chain, with user experience, with what it takes to tweak and tune the system to make it actually usable. In the case of Intel, because obviously, like you guys have seen the news, Intel CPUs with all the overvolting, over factory overclock stuff on the BIOSes, that it's not actually performing with true stock, and it's basically overclocked, and some people, their systems aren't stable, so you have to undervolt, you have to basically lose performance if you want to run it stock. So that's the sad reality of the current generation. Now, obviously, Intel's going to launch a new generation of CPUs this year in Q4. So there will be a 15th gen, a brand new socket, brand new motherboard. So anybody who bought 14th gen in the last, anytime this year, or basically since that came out, they literally got scammed. They literally got scammed. So that's why I say don't just basically ignore the 14th gen, because there's most likely something better coming from both AMD and Intel. So, but that has changed in reports. Dell, Acer, go with AMD. Yeah, it's not that they don't go with AMD. Yes, they do go with AMD. But that's not what I said. I said that even if they go with AMD, Intel can still outship. They can outship AMD in terms of how many products they can deliver. You know, in a given window, like in a certain month. Let's just take like this month, for example. Intel most likely manufactured way more. I don't know how much more, but Intel manufactured way more CPUs, significantly more CPUs than AMD manufactured, because AMD has to use TSMC, so they have to buy their wafers, and then within that set of wafers, they have to decide how many of these wafers are going to go to servers, how many of them are going to go to Ryzen, how many of them are going to go to Radeon, how many of them are going to go to Epic, you know, all this stuff, embedded markets, all these different things that they make products for. They have to divide that pool, that pool of resources, that wafers allocation, and decide what will actually be made. Meanwhile, Intel, because they make their own wafers, because they make their own CPUs, They can divide as much as they want. They can make as many CPUs as they want or as few CPUs as they want. That is the advantage of a company being what's called vertically integrated. Intel is a vertically integrated company. So anyway, this is going way too much into like university, like this is like college degree level discussions now, talking about like vertical integration and all that kind of stuff. So this is definitely like going way off topic. They can, but that's not happening. Intel is having a bad day with everything against AMD. No, not really. The worst thing that's happening for Intel is they're losing market share in data center. A lot. Like, that's actually where it really hurts. Like, Intel can afford to lose more market share in the gaming market or in the consumer market, and it doesn't really move the needle too much. I'll tell you the two areas where if AMD if AMD can claw away more market share in the laptop market and the server market, just those two, that is a big deal. That actually is a more significant win for them long term than like any sort of win that they get in the consumer desktop. Now, a lot of the people that watch this channel focus only on consumer desktop, which means they're always thinking about like, i9, Ryzen 9, X3D, gaming benchmarks, that kind of stuff. That is such a small piece of the jigsaw puzzle. It's literally like one piece of the entire puzzle. Is just that one thing. So the servers, the laptops, that stuff is like more than half of the entire jigsaw puzzle. So that is where most of the priority is. But anyway, AMD, like their CPUs are really good. I expect Zen 5 to be a significant improvement to Zen 4. We will be testing Zen 5. I plan to get Zen 5 whenever it comes out on launch day and cover that CPU in depth. So we will be focusing on Zen 5. I've talked about it a lot in previous live streams. As we get closer to, once Computex happens and all that stuff gets whatever they say there, then we will start more extensively covering the motherboards. Because I'm going to be talking a lot about motherboards specifically for those that are interested in building a brand new desktop or upgrading to a brand new desktop. If they're on a really old platform, we are going to be looking at all the different new motherboards that are coming out to support the Zen 5 launch. There's going to be a lot of new motherboards, whole brand new chipset, everything. We're going to be discussing them in depth. We're going to be doing deep dives. We're going to be doing block diagram breakdowns, PCIe lane allocations, DDR5 memory. We're going to be looking at memory support, how many layers of PCB the actual motherboard has, because that'll determine like how good you can overclock RAM historically. So those are the sort of things. So if you like this sort of content, it's going to get better, let me tell you, because we are going to focus on motherboards extensively, probably for the next like month and a half. Or I guess once Computex happens, which is the first week of June, for those that don't know. So we're literally like a week and a few days away from Computex. It is the biggest show of the year for those who are interested in PC. You should get the title, The Motherboard Guy. Well, recently I've done a lot of like DDR5 content, but so I feel like I'm more of like the memory guy. But yeah, we're gonna shift focus. So the last several videos that I've done have all been focused on DDR5. Now we're gonna shift focus and start talking about motherboards again, because the motherboard is actually one of the most important choices you make when you're thinking of building a PC. A lot of people overlook that. A lot of people think, oh, what GPU am I going to get? And what CPU am I going to get? They don't really think about the motherboard. But I've said this before, the motherboard determines what you ultimately can and cannot do with your PC. It doesn't matter how powerful your CPU is, if your motherboard doesn't have a certain thing that you need it to have, and you forgot about that when you bought it, too bad. So that is the reason why we're going to be focusing a lot on motherboard content, because not a lot of people talk about motherboards, and I feel like the content that I've seen other YouTube channels, larger channels in particular, cover when it comes to motherboards, they're not addressing the things that I feel like ultimately factor into the buying decision. You know what I mean? Like, it's not all about the VRM quality of a motherboard. Like, that's just like one thing. And as far as I'm concerned, the VRM is, especially on Ryzen, the VRM quality is far more insignificant than like how the PCIe lanes are allocated. So I wouldn't put too much weight into VRM quality if I was buying a motherboard. So just because one motherboard has like a really good VRM, that doesn't mean that that's better than like another motherboard that might not have as good of a VRM. Because the other motherboard might offer something that the good VRM motherboard doesn't have. So, and those are the sort of things that we're going to look into as we get closer to the Zen 5 launch. And that's why you got the Asus Crosshair Hero. Yeah, the Asus Crosshair Hero has a lot of things that you can't get on like a Pro Art, for example. Like, it doesn't have postcode debug. But the Pro Art has some stuff that the Crosshair doesn't have. The Pro Art has DisplayPort input for pass-through for video signals out USB-C or USB 4, whereas the Crosshair Hero has USB 4, but it doesn't have the DisplayPort input. As far as I remember, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it does have DisplayPort input. But there's things that motherboards have that not every other motherboard has. So there's a lot of differences. So it's not as simple as this motherboard is better than that motherboard. No, there's way more nuances. So it's all about use case, what you're actually building the PC to do primarily. Like, is it a gaming PC primarily? Is it a production machine for content creation as the primary goal of the PC? You know what I'm saying? So these are the sort of things that I feel like you don't really get a lot of content on the internet talking about these things. You know, like, why would you buy one motherboard over another motherboard? You know, like, assuming they're both the same cost. Like, if both motherboards are $400 motherboards, okay, what's different about them besides the brand? You know, there's actually quite a bit of differences, because what I have realized is that motherboards have way more variance in what they offer than any other PC component. Motherboards have more differences among them than RAM, CPUs, and GPUs combined. Because I guess the only other one that would have similar differences are the CPUs, because CPUs, obviously, they have different core counts, different boost speeds, etc. But like GPUs, they're pretty much, you know, like every 4060 is basically the same. Like, the only difference is the cooler, and that's basically like grading the VRM cooling on a motherboard. You know what I'm saying? So it's very elementary in terms of what factors into the buying decision. Ultimately, if I'm looking at a GPU, it's like, how quiet is it? What are the temperatures like under full load? And, you know, what... And that's irrespective of what performance tier it's in or price point it's in. So, like, that's what I use. And then I guess the third thing is, like, do I like how it looks? Like, do I actually like the look of the cooler on it? You know, like, that would be like the third one. So that's pretty much it, right? Like, there's not that many variables when it comes to choosing a graphics card. Like, if you know you're only going to spend $500 on a graphics card as the maximum spend, then that limits you to a specific GPU model. And then within that model, now you're comparing like coolers, I guess warranty duration, and that's it. But with motherboards, there's like way more differences. Does the motherboard have a postcode debug? Does the motherboard have an X4 PCIe? Does the motherboard have USB 4? Does the motherboard have more exotic things like multi GPU support via either dual power supply support or PCIe power connectors, auxiliary power to the motherboard. Like these are sort of things that people don't always think about. So, is the PCIe spacing good such that I can actually use all the slots? Because if I stick a massive 4090 in there, am I still going to be able to use the other slots, or are they just going to be covered up and wasted? Like that factors in too. So there's a lot of stuff when it comes to choosing a motherboard. It's not a simple, I'm going to get this one because it's $200 and it looks cool. It's not that simple. It is not that simple. You don't want to buy a motherboard and then figure out later on that you can't do like a certain thing that other people can do on their motherboard because yours doesn't have this one thing. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody wants to be in that situation. So anyway, software saying your diagramming helped. Yeah, we're gonna be doing a lot. We're going back to the diagramming. Yep, we're gonna be doing block diagrams. We're gonna be doing deep dives on a lot of different motherboards. We're gonna be covering everything from the highest end tier, like the most expensive motherboard, all the way down to the budget, the cheapest motherboard. We're gonna do all of them. Pretty much all of them this time around. Because there's not a lot of tech content to talk about, so that's the perfect time to just talk about motherboards. So that's what you guys can look forward to in terms of the tech-based topics that are not really gaming related. That's gonna be it for the stream, guys. We stream every Thursdays, every Thursday evenings. If you're in North America, it's typically the start time. It varies, but if you're in Eastern time zone, it's usually 9 p.m. Eastern. I guess if Pacific time, what is that in Pacific time? 6 p.m. Pacific is usually when the live stream starts. So in that time zone. So if you have tech-related questions, feel free to ask them during the live stream. That is actually the best time to ask tech questions, because I can answer the question live. If not during the Thursday stream, then I can address it. If I do a rare weekend live stream, but the weekend live streams, for those of you that watch my content regularly, at least the live stream part of it, the weekend streams they're sporadic, they're not very consistent, and they're also more focused on the gaming side of things. But that doesn't mean that you can't ask like a tech-related question or anything like that. So by all means, if you are attending one of the weekend streams, like either the Friday one or the Saturday one, because usually it's one or the other, and sometimes both. Yeah, and if you miss the Thursday stream due to whatever life circumstances, that's fine. Just you can stop by the weekend stream, assuming I'm live on the weekend, and ask your questions then. Because I do get a lot of comments on some of my how-to videos, and I basically reply. Well, if it's a simple thing, I'll reply with the answer in the comments. But if it's something that is way more complicated, then I usually tell them to ask it while I'm live, because it's better to address it live so that if someone else ran into the same problem, they can get the solution in a video format. So anyway, and if it's a really big topic, what I usually do is I'll take that section from the live stream where I answer the question, I turn it into its own video, kind of like a clipped video. So I'll do that too. So yeah, that's basically how we handle it on this channel for tech related content. Are you going to do allows you looking at what was it? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's okay. Usually, yeah. So that would be what, the 6th? Yeah, that would be on the 6th. That would be like 2 weeks from today. Okay, yeah, I'll consider it. I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't do it. But yeah, I'll probably do a look back at Computex. By the time Thursday rolls around, that's like at the end of Computex. So by then, all the large product announcements will have already occurred. So yeah, we'll do that. Well, I did a similar thing for Asus during CES earlier this year. So we'll do something of a similar format for Computex again. So yeah, we'll do that. Anyway, so that's it for the live stream, guys. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys are new to the channel, if you're not subscribed and you want to know when I go live, definitely get subscribed to the channel. So if you do have a question that comes up, if you're doing something PC DIY related, you can ask that live. And until then, I will catch you guys next week on Tech Thursdays. Until then, take care, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.